Did you watch, I know Andrew did, and he was going to talk about it tonight. I don't think he talked about it last week. Did you watch, the Black Phone?
No, yeah, Andrew talked about it last week. I haven't watched it
He
yet.
did.
I'm
Okay.
going to wait for it to stream.
Yeah,
Yeah, but it looks super good. He loved it.
that's cool. Yeah. It's tough because so many they're just not my alley. We've talked about this before. Like I'm kind of excited to see what is happening in the world of horror because I think you're getting something that's a little more accessible for people who aren't horror fans, if you will. Because so much of that just got so niche in so many ways. Like I enjoy like I thought The Ring was nice and scary. I enjoyed all
Hmm.
the Scream movies, but like The Ring was the kind of level of scary that I enjoyed, right? I don't hate the whole supernatural thing, but like I had no desire to see Annabelle about the doll.
See, that one's crazy to me because that's a true story,
True story. I know.
and it's around me. Like
Oh, is
it's
that
yeah,
near
it's
you?
from Connecticut. Yeah,
Um, and
or
we
Rhode.
all and we talked ad nauseum about how we're all pretty much disgusted by the fact that they're trying to do a Blair Witch remake.
It's so stupid. Like somebody posted something about it somewhere else, and I was like, what made the Blair Witch work wasn't the movie.
No,
It was the marketing around the movie that you could never do again. You can't
no,
replicate that experience during that first like week when no one knew that it was fake.
yeah.
Like it was for that period of time, that was a true story, and it was fucking crazy.
I went and saw that. That was actually one of I think I'd have to run down my list. I think that's maybe like one of 5 horror movies that I've seen in theaters because I just heard it was so freaky, and that movie fucked me up. That and
Hmm.
it's the classic scene, but when the girl is sitting there with the light and she's breathing and it's just the snot
Yeah,
bubble
yeah.
and the light turns slightly and you see that shit in the background, you're just like, what the fuck? And because of the way they shot it, like that was
And most of it
aside
was
from
improvised too. Like that's
yeah,
the thing. Like it was crazy.
you can't redo that movie. It's like David, obviously blessed us all with all the storylines from
The Paranormal
the
Activity.
paranormal activity. I feel like I would probably watch the first one, maybe the second one, just because they look like they'd be interesting to watch. Just
I
from
think
a,
they're all on Paramount Plus now.
they probably are. Just from like a filmmaking perspective, I'd like to see what they did there. But he told us all those storylines, and I'm like, yeah,
Hmm.
I don't like none of this shit. Would I give a fuck about? Like, there's nothing in everything you've just talked about that I like feel like I care enough that I want to watch this entire series of movies, like at all. Then I tell you what, welcome to the All Pop No Culture podcast. I'm back, and I'm your host, Pete. It's good to be back, and tonight. It's just me and Kevin.
Yeah.
Andrew's tired. Andy's out with his blonde, as he calls it. Kim will be back again. It looks like you guys had a really good time. I'm really glad about that. Kim's a fun bird.
Yeah, she was cool. Um, it's the first time. Yeah, it's the first time we legitimately had a girl on, right? We had some times
Yeah,
back in the way beginning when Sam was on site, but was never on. Um,
right. We had Michelle,
and
who we'll bring back for our Halloween episode to discuss horror films. Because
Yeah, we definitely, especially in this last like year or two, I think, because she was on before I moved, so she was
oh
on
yeah, it
3 years ago.
yeah, it was one of it was like our first Halloween
Hmm.
we had her on because
So
that was I think George came. That's when she ordered the pizza. Or
maybe, maybe
was that a Plan B episode?
I think that was a Plan B episode because I don't think if George was
I
there, he
forget.
didn't
Some of that runs
record.
together. Oh yeah.
Cody,
Oh no,
yeah.
I knew he didn't record, but yeah. Whew.
But yeah, it's been a minute, and there's been a lot of good horror since then, in my opinion.
It's starting, you know, I haven't watched a lot, but I'm just from impressions that I'm getting of stuff people are posting about horror, and a couple people that I'm following on Instagram, who are really into a lot of horror movies. It seems like there's a lot of horror now that is, I don't want to say getting a little more old school, but we're definitely out of that torture porn era, like completely. And
Yeah.
there's less gore, and we're turning back to like horror films with jump scares and scares, which is like I like this whole the black phone thing that's going on.
Hmm.
You know,
Well,
I
yeah.
think.
Andrew just watched that. Talked about it last week.
Oh, did it good? I can't wait to watch that. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
By
I'm
the way, by the
stoked.
time you guys are listening to this, if you're listening to the audio, you will have all the episodes posted for you. My solemn prayer. Yeah, no, because I got them all now from you. In fact, 104 is going to get posted almost directly after the show, and then from what I've seen, the 5, 6, and 7 are like super simple edits with you and
Yeah.
Andrew. Like it's going to be cakewalk. Behind the scenes, don't need to see all that, but yeah. So we started to talk there. Stranger Things, which I finally finished with Soph. We finally got around to getting all the way through. I, you know, season 3 is one that people refer to as like the weakest season. And I know you said, you know, in the past when we talked about it, that it's not that it was necessarily weak. It was just that it's the least organized, if you will, of the season, or to some degree. I found.
Yeah, I can't put my finger on what wasn't quite right with it compared to the other ones. I don't dislike it at all. I actually really enjoy season 3, and I think we talked about it. The fact that we grew up around malls, right?
Oh
So
yeah.
um, I think there's maybe something that was maybe lost on a different generation. I don't know that kids hang out in the malls anymore. I don't think anybody hangs out in the malls anymore.
Actually, depending on their age, yes, that is still a thing to do. San Ramon here in glorious Northern California, they opened up the city center, which is it's basically a mall. And Stone are just starting to close, but that's a whole nother story for another day. But the city center, that's where kids go and hang out now, because there's a bunch of different restaurants and stores. There's a movie theater in there. So I found this out because Sophia is not a big go and hang out like that kind of girl, but her friends like to go do, like some people that she's friends with like to go, oh, we'll just go to the city center and walk around, which I also think, now that I'm really thinking back to it, even when we were, at least for me, when I was in junior high and high school, I never really hung out at the mall that much unless I was going there to like see a girl who was going to be at the mall for some reason. Like to
That's
just
true.
hang out at the
That's true.
mall was never quite a thing. Now, we would hang out in random shopping center parking lots, either skating or,
Hmm.
there's like be a baseball card store in that shopping center. So we'd go there and then we'd just be out in the parking lot being hooligans. Um, but to just go walk around the mall, we never really did. Like I always, like I said, I would go, if I hung out in the mall, it was because we were either going to meet a group of girls there and walk around, or I had a specific purpose to go to the mall to buy something. And then we wound up just kind of walking around
Hmm.
because my parents said they'd be there to pick us up in 3 hours, something like that. But wow, season 3, I thought I liked it actually even more than seasons 1 and seasons 2. Season 1 and season 2. I loved Stranger Things. Season 3, the division of the two groups and the storylines and the way they put everything together was just so cool. I loved everything they did with Elle in that season. Um, Steve and Dustin and Robin. I
See,
want a spin-off of fucking just them. I
Robin is
love that.
she's my favorite, dude. Like, Steve is probably my favorite, legit. But
Yeah.
like, Robin, dude, I fell in love with her. Like
Yeah.
from the moment she started, she's just, you know, mouthy
Yep.
and all that. And I thought she was great.
Oh, I just remember Soph and I were so in love, and we felt so bad for Robin with the Vicky thing, and we loved, and there was such a cool thing, and this is what really in that season, especially season 3, made me absolutely just fall in love with Steve as that character, because Robin was obviously his best friend. There was obvious that there was, at least on Steve's end, some sort of sexual tension there, even if it wasn't necessarily
Mm-hmm,
there for Robin.
for sure.
But Robin basically comes out to Steve, this total dickhead of the school, that she knows is that. And Steve, in like, in what you're not expecting from that character to that point, really, is just like, okay, well, okay. And he like doesn't miss a beat. He takes a moment and he absorbs what she says, and then he goes on treating her exactly as if she were just one of his friends, and they're talking about this girl and the thing. And then now to jump forward, to season 4, when that girl, when Robin sees her in the surplus store, my heart broke a little bit. But then
Yeah,
when they were at the like the basically the Red
the
Cross
sandwich bar.
station,
Yeah,
and Vicky comes out and she starts talking, and you realize in that instant this girl is perfect for Robin. Like, this is a match made, and just the way they play it, you get so happy for Robin. It's
yeah.
like it's so sweet because you're like, fuck yes. But that's so season 3, like I said, I loved everything. I loved all the Russian shit. I thought it was fucking hilarious. It brought back one of my absolute favorite characters from the show, Murray Bauman.
I love Murray.
Brett Gelman is hilarious. That
Yes.
character is phenomenal. I love that whole bit when he's telling Joyce and Hopper how they should have sex, when he's sitting there with what was it? Not Alexei. I want to say Alexei, but I know it's not Alexei. The Russian dude who was helping him with the glasses, who wound up being a really sweet dude in his own right.
Yeah, that was Alexi.
Was it Alexi? Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love that little play off the two of them, and him explaining that to them. That was just, that whole exchange was so funny. He is a perfect scene stealer. The Duffer Brothers, I think, just the series as a whole. I'm just going to be all over the place on this one for a minute. The series as a whole, one of the things that impresses Sophia and I the most, and part of it's just a like a personal filmmaking thing that I love. The transitions that these guys use to go from scene to scene and cut between each of the little groups when the parties are split up. It is rare in this series, in 4 seasons, that they do just a standard smash cut. Like, they are using windows, the photography, to, like, just the way they transition in between the groups is absolutely amazing. I can't give you a specific one now because they're all so goddamn good. And every time it happens in the film, I'm like, God damn, that is just some brilliant ass filmmaking that these fucking guys have done. The other thing they are great at doing is casting. And when they introduce a character, it's not a wasted character in any way, shape, or form. We all love Eddie.
Yep.
Well, we all love it. And that, again, that was a heartbreaking death at 4. Perfect character to introduce. I've got a theory about Eddie, which I'll share with you in a moment. Um, I think, though, fucking Argyle,
I
absolutely
love I
hilarious.
love Ira.
Oh
Like
my God.
he's like the polarizing character. There's a ton of people that do not like Argyle.
Which I get, because I mean, he's fucking Spicoli. Like, he jumps, they even make the kind of the joke in the show. Like, have you ever seen Fast Time? That whole thing. He is
Hmm.
very much that, like, stereotypical, prototypical California stoner from the 80s in both dress and action. But I think, again, the Duffers did that completely and absolutely on purpose. I don't
Oh, for
think
sure.
that was like they meant it to be like that. They weren't trying to do a whole, like, you know, positive pot spin, because Argyle is that stoner that works like that. Jonathan, when he's high, Jonathan, I actually dislike that character at the beginning of the season
Mm-hmm.
when he's still high. Like he's so you're just like the whole dinner scene when Murray comes to visit Joyce after she gets the doll and they're at the
Mm-hmm.
thing and he's just so high that he doesn't even know where he is. That it's just like that for Jonathan. That's just so annoying
Yeah.
to
Well,
me.
it reminds me, I think it was Leah in our comments a few episodes back commented about how she was worried with them moving Jonathan off to the side that they were going to kill him off. And I
Yeah.
replied, and I was like, no, I think he's safe because they literally made you not care about Jonathan. You know what I
Yep.
mean? Like the way that the season went for most of the season, he wasn't likable. He wasn't
No.
interesting. And the Duffer brothers like to hurt you, man. They really like to hurt you. Look at
Huh.
Bob. Look at Eddie. Like
Oh.
they killed Hopper at the end. In season 3, right? Like they blew him up. They
Yeah.
gave you your hint um in the post
In the
credits,
Russia thing.
but
Yeah.
yeah, but
But still, you're gutted when you think Hopper's dead. You're gutted,
mhm,
even though now that you've watched now 3 seasons of the show. You get to the end and you're like, we didn't see a fucking body.
right.
So I don't really know that Hopper's dead, which everybody thought, and I, yeah, um, I just that season 3 blew me away. I absolutely loved it. I thought I was worried because I knew there was some stuff with the Russians in there, and the Carrie Elvis character, you fucking hate his ass, but he gets his, so you're like,
Hmm.
you're like really good with that. I was worried that the Russian stuff was going to get stupid and hokey, and it didn't, and
It
it
was it
worked.
was just silly enough and just hokey enough.
Yes, yes, and that whole group, the entire time that they're down below the mall, I kept looking at Steve, and I wanted to be annoyed by the Scoops Ahoy uniform, but for some reason I wasn't. It just worked, and we get Erica Sinclair, who is
She's fucking fantastic, dude.
oh my god, that that so season 3 was just epic, phenomenal end. Like there was enough of a cliffhanger with some stuff. You're brokenhearted because the Will and Joyce and Jonathan are moving, and Elle's going with them, which is great. You're very happy. Yeah, I'm so happy for Elle because she's got like a family other than Hopper, and she's got a
Hmm.
mom who's going to take care of her. Um, you got the other kids doing what they're doing, and it worked really well. It was a nice it, season 3 worked incredibly well because to me it was fun and it sets up season 4. Like when you watch it, you can obviously there's an incredibly coherent thing going on. Like these guys, the Duffer Brothers knew exactly where they were going with this. It wasn't one of these like, oh well, we wrote the season and we know we're gonna have another season, so we got to figure out a way to do this. Like they knew
No, yeah,
like
they've known they wanted 4 or 5 seasons, and they've known where the story goes. I read something that says that they know what the last 20 minutes of the entire series is. Like they have that plan. They know what it is because they've compared it to the end of the Lord of the Rings, the Return of the King.
oh
So they're
nice.
they're ending, they're picturing like that. So you get kind of a follow up with all the characters that are assuming
Yeah,
presumably left
you get the
alive,
epilogue.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So they know what they're doing there. They know who makes it. That was their one cliffhanger from season 4, or the one thing they changed at the end of season 4 in their original script. Max dies for sure. Like she dies and that's it. And then they decided to change it. So, I mean, they know what they're going to do with her, but for us,
Yeah.
Max is still up in the air.
And I think they decided to change it because I don't think they realized the kind of growth as an actor that Sadie Sink was going to wind up having, because it is a ridiculous fucking snub at the Emmys for her. Like Millie Bob is great as Elle.
She's
But
fine.
Elle is Elle for me until we get towards the middle end of the end of season 4. As we get to it, Elle has always kind of been one note. Like she hasn't been, honestly,
Mhm.
she hasn't been my favorite. I loved it. She's the powered one, and we talked about this in group chat. Her and Mike, like I get it, but I don't know. Maybe it's
See,
just
yes.
Finn Wolfhard. I don't know what it is. I just
Well,
don't.
I think the story needs them to be a couple, like that has to be
Yes.
there, but I don't care about them. Like
Nah.
I
Not
don't
not as a
know. I don't
couple.
know if it's yeah, I don't know if it's that neither one of them is super impressive as an actor. I don't know if it's the writing of their relationship. I don't know if it's because they're, 16, 17, whatever. I'm more interested in Steve and Robin, who we know aren't a couple, but their relationship
Yeah.
is more interesting.
Yes.
I'm more interested in Will and Mike than I am in Elle and Mike, because I have we'll get to this, but I have a season 5 theory. I think I posted it in our
Yeah. I think I.
chat. Um, but I have a season 5 theory around Will. But like everybody and Jonathan and Will's relationship, like I'm more
Oh,
interested in that. Like every
I'm
other
more
relationship is more interesting
exactly.
than Ellen.
I care about and I'm more invested in Lucas and Max and that whole
Hmm.
relationship that
For
comes about.
sure.
Dude, I'm sorry. I like they're reuniting, and then at the end when Lucas is reading the talisman to her in the hospital, like that, that to me, the two of them and Lucas is, I don't even want to call it redemption because it was just, oh God, here we
He
go.
was a
I'm all over the place
teenager.
again.
He's a
He
teenager. Like,
was. He was. And
yeah.
this is and anybody who has teenagers and who has watched this transition know that 8th grade into freshman year and even the 7th and 8th grade year is a really pivotal odd time for kids friendships and relationships because all sorts of things happen where your interests go different ways. So that Lucas story in that first episode with the basketball and they're playing D&D at the same time with Eddie. They introduce Eddie, and you love Eddie from the minute he walks on screen. The minute that all the stuff, he's so good because when you first see it, you think, okay, this is going to be a Billy replacement. He's going to be this metalhead, and yeah, he's into Dungeons and Dragons, but he's gonna kind of be like the dick metalhead guy. And he's not. He's a goofy fucking dipshit is
Hmm.
what he really, really is. And you see that when he's talking to Chrissy, selling her the weed out at the picnic bench, that he's not this like tough guy, even though he almost kind of he puts on that air. And you see it again more throughout the season when he's freaked out about what happens to Chrissy and he's hiding in the fucking boathouse, which is one of the best jump scares of all time in the show because he's in the fucking boat. He's hiding under the blanket, but they've poked the shit out of it with the oar, and they keep making reference that they're poking it with the oar. Yet when he jumps out, it still fucking made me jump, even though I knew it was coming. Like
Hmm.
you're watching it and you're like, oh yeah, he's in there and they're gonna jump out. Like they have set this up for us. But they just masterful filmmaking. Um, they make me this is always my thing with any, whether it's a movie or a TV series or whatever it is. If the filmmaker can make me not give a shit about all the little like sciency things, if you will, that are wrong in the movie, and I can suspend my disbelief very easily and not care, then you've done a phenomenal job. And I didn't care that Steve, even though he was on, I think like they make reference, he's on the water polo team or something, or I know he's a trained lifeguard, but Steve is suddenly doing like a 30-foot free dive in the middle of a lake at night.
And he's down there for like 3 minutes.
Yeah, like I'm like in my head I'm going bullshit, but I didn't care. I didn't
Yeah,
care.
I mean,
And there's
I was a
season
lifeguard in
4
high
is
school, and it's
that's
just it's not.
no.
And then for him to come back up, get his and be fine, like he wasn't like gasping
Yeah.
for breath, or I'm like that he was down there for a long time.
Yes.
You know.
I like in one way how they like they were setting up a love triangle between Nancy and Steve and Jonathan. But what that really comes down to, what it really is to me, was the two of them actually getting closure on their relationship that they never really got,
Hmm.
because they went, like, it was just all the horrible shit happened. Yeah, Steve was instrumental and helped out and everything was great and he was awesome, but Nancy kind of got into the whole investigative journalism, thing with Jonathan. So they kind of, even though you saw it and you didn't like it, because let's be real, Nancy and Jonathan is like, that's a couple that never actually would have happened. We
Yeah.
all know those
Yeah.
kids
Yeah.
in high school. Let's come on. But it worked. But the two of them work in a weird way. Um, yeah. So season 4 was just a phenomenal, like, I can't. Dear Billy, take the whole Kate Bush thing out of it. Take
Yeah.
running up that hill out of it. Sadie Sink as Max in that episode, when she is reading that fucking letter to her brother,
Hmm.
tears, bro. That whole episode, that's the thing that killed me about the Emmy snub, is I'm like, okay, I've read this other stuff, and I think there were a couple of things that I had seen that I was like, okay, I get why they're nominating there. I'm like, but it is a, to me, a true snub that she is not nominated, because
Hmm.
that little copper top throughout season 4 is amazing. In every scene she's in, you're transfixed by Max. You can't
Yeah.
take your eyes off of Max.
Yeah.
Everything, like,
She was fine in season 2 and 3. Like
yeah,
she was good.
she
She was
played a
one of the
role.
kids, whatever. But she was good in season 4. Like,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Just like I said, man, just when she's sitting there reading that to Billy, it's fucking heartbreaking.
Hmm.
When she like bears that stuff out, you get to see it. And that's, again, it's kind of nice though in some ways, because that little incident leads the Max and Lucas reunion. um they introduce some other characters to us, not, what's his dick, the crazy psycho basketball player who's hunting Eddie.
No, yeah, yeah.
I
I
forget
can't
it.
even
I
remember
forget
his
his
name.
name now. um who just is Looney Tunes banana shit. I will say this, even though I think that Dear Billy is arguably the best episode of the entire series so far, I think that the season 4 part 2, I still enjoyed more than part 1. Like, I really liked part 1.
Yeah.
I love the mystery of it. I love everything they did with the whole Vecna thing, in the beginning, and introducing that. And it was fun because I had to stop and explain to Soph why it was such a coup that they got Robert Englund to play Creel. I thought that was awesome. Like, I was like, sweet. And he's another one that, in that role, in that moment, I don't think Robert Englund gets enough credit for his acting chops, because everybody
Yeah.
thinks of him as
Yeah.
Freddy Krueger. That was a creepy, chilling role, and he played it and did it very, very well. I love, um, so season 2 second half, Vecna, this character is introduced now. It's really neat, because here's some like super D&D nerd shit for you that's interesting. So in the D&D world, Vecna is like this super famous lich who is just, he's like part of mythology and lore. And I love that one of Vecna's hands is like crazy, the one that he
Hmm.
uses to name, because in Dungeons and Dragons lore, if you will, Vecna has kind of disappeared. He's out floating in the actual world somewhere, but there are two artifacts, the Hand of Vecna and the Eye of Vecna, which are these massive cursed objects. And so it was, the hand was really, really neat. The fact that the eyes, on his victims pop in the way they do. I really like what they did with all that. Um, the tie-in that Vecna is actually one, like, I think I put it in our group chat. I had myself stuck on, because they introduced us to Creel and they had the dad. I was at, you cast Robert England as the dad. I was stuck on the idea that it was going to be like almost like an Amityville horror kind of thing. Like this house was, and the house was a major focus, but that it was going to become like this was the ancient Indian burial ground, from Poltergeist, that it was all built on, and this is where this came from. And the fact that the kid winds up being one, and the whole, like, that whole thing, and the way they did that together, I was like, son of a bitch. And I think I put it in our group that Soph called that. Like, we started watching, and I'm throwing that theory out to her, and she's all, watch. That's one, which makes sense, because at first I thought, oh, it'll just be fun. And I I went to IMDb and I looked up Jamie Campbell Bower as Vecna, because I was like, look. So, side note, Jamie Campbell Bower, the one thing I knew him from before this was he is a creepy, weird, one of the leader vampire cult people in Twilight. And he's a horrible character. Like, look, I'm telling you, if you just watch the last two movies, you don't need to watch any of the crap before it. Watch the last two movies; they're actually not that bad, and frankly, they're worth it for the battle scene at the end of the second movie. It's really well done. Anyway, so we watch him, and I see IMDb was smart, and the way they credit him is smart, because it credits him as Vecna and kindly orderly. It doesn't credit him as 001. So
Mm-hmm.
I am going back through, I'm thinking, oh, it's just a little Easter egg. I'm thinking he's the kindly orderly at the state hospital where Creel is. So I go back and I'm like, look, I want to see. And you go back and he's never there. And then all of a sudden, right away at the second half of season one, as we're flashing back, he shows up in the hospital, and that was instantly, my daughter Soph goes, he's one, and he becomes Vecna, and that's, Elle cracks open, like, this is when this all happens. And I was like, that's an interesting theory. I don't know if, and you watch, and I'm like, well, son of a bitch, you're dead
Yeah.
on
See,
right.
I
Like,
thought the same thing, but what I thought was that I didn't think he was actually there. Like I thought Vecna already existed,
yeah,
and I
same.
didn't think he was one, but I felt like he was like a projection that she was seeing. Because the second time I watched it, when I watched it more with my kids, um, I realized that he did interact with a couple of the other kids. But the first time I watched it, I didn't even notice. So
Felt
I
like it was a
thought he
Sixth
was just,
Sense kind of thing.
yeah, like she was seeing him because he was putting himself there to,
Yeah.
you know.
um but yeah, he that whole role that cat did was really good too.
Mhm.
Like, I thought that was really interesting, the way they did that. I love that storyline when you finally get to understand how that all came about and everything else, which made, um first, we got a big family laugh. So my father-in-law, Chrissy's dad, you know how, like, old people, like your mom's probably, or you've experienced as old people, like, oh, my husband's just looking just like Kevin Costner as he gets over, he's going to, and they're half joking as they say it, but it's a whole thing. Like, my stepmom always says that my dad looks like Kevin Costner to her, and I'm like, no, he looks like Richard Dreyfuss at the end of Mr. Holland's Opus. Let's not kid ourselves. He's got more hair, but that's what he looks like. And if I took picture, and if I showed you my dad and Mr. Holland, you'd be like, son of a bitch. So we're sitting there watching the end of the season, and when Paul Reiser steps out of the car, when they've taken Elle from the van, and he's like, hey, kiddo. My father-in-law is always calling my wife kiddo, and it my Sophia goes, oh my god, it's Papa. I'm like, shut up. And I rewound it. I looked at him like, son of a bitch. And then the two of them are eating in the diner and I'm watching them. And it's all I can fucking see now is that Paul Reiser is my fucking father-in-law. Like, it's hilarious to me. Um, God, so many thoughts about the last 3 episodes of the season that it's like there's so much in there. Like, I don't have a very clear, not that I ever really do, but a very clear linear way to talk about everything that went on, because there's so much that happens and so many fun little things that are almost blink if you miss it, kind of stuff. um I think I love that Owens comes back, and I love that he is fighting for Elle during the whole thing. I think that's
Mhm.
great because it continues Owens from season 2 and part of season 3, where he was never the bad guy at Hawkins, and you always knew that, but he was
Mhm.
still kind of the bad guy, just in as much as he was part of the machine.
Yeah.
Even though he's helping Bob and them at the end and everything else, he's still part of the bad Hawkins lab thing, right? He turns out to be an amazing fucking dude, and you love him. Uh, I'm sorry, fucking what's his bucket? Matthew Modine, Papa, Doctor Brenner. That death was way too good for that cat.
Hmm.
Getting shot like that was not set. That was the one thing in the episode that left me wanting. That was not good. Like, I wanted to do him like Dr. Romano in ER, and when Elle was pulling that helicopter down, I was like, drop the helicopter on fucking Brenner. Like, that's, but they did it because they had to give him a way to release the collar and kind of give him and Elle some closure, which I still like. Release the collar, fine, but just with the way he treated those kids and his weird misguided look, I'm like, getting
Well,
gunned down
the
is
the
too good a death
problem
for you.
was never the way he treated. I mean, it was a problem, but story wise, wasn't that he was shitty to the kids. It was that despite it all, she still loved him in a way. Like, it was the
Which
Stockholm
makes
syndrome thing.
sense.
Like, that's her
Yeah,
dad. Yeah. And a side note on that, when the show started, Matthew Modine lived with uh, um, what's her name's family,
Millie Bobby Brown.
Billy Bobby Brown's family. So they were able to build a personal relationship before doing the show.
That's cool.
Yeah, yeah. I read that somewhere recently, and I was like, that's super cool. Like, because their relationship should be, it should be special, even if it's
Yeah.
broken special. It should still be special. Um, so I thought that was kind of cool. But yeah, he's great as the bad guy. Like, he sucks. Like,
He is. He is. You like. I always tell Soph it's my favorite bad guy when they have managed to write him so much that I physically hate the character.
mhm.
Like you fucking just hate him. He's such a horrible ass. Which is why I feel like that death just wasn't satisfying enough. I knew, though, as nice as he becomes, you knew he was gonna fucking jack Elle when she said she was ready. You knew it. There was no way he wasn't,
Yeah,
because
he
he's
wasn't gonna
so
let her go.
yeah, he's the mad scientist. He's the mad scientist from the Monster of the Week, and that's okay. Um, God, who else? Oh, I got a season 5 prediction. Speaking of two new characters, especially now that we've gotten a glimpse into her world other than Dusty Bun singing to her. Season 5 prediction, since we have introduced the character, since Argyle is now living in Hawkins at the Hopper cabin, or wherever he and Jonathan are going to live, however they're going to do that. Eden and Susie show up in Hawkins at some point. That thing when they open the van and all the smoke comes out and Eden
Mhm.
is in there with it, that was hilarious. And any of us who grew up knowing Mormon families, that, like, we're watching that, and Sophia has Mormon friends, but kids today are so nice that
Hmm.
it's just not like it's not a it not that we ever made fun of Mormon kids or anything like that, because some of the nicest people I've ever known in my entire life are fucking Mormon kids. They're really amazing people. But that whole family, I was like, oh yeah, it's a big ass family. They're in Utah. Like, you've got the sisters that are helping raise the kids. Like, it was so funny. But you had that oldest sister who was the kind of rebellious one, in a way. Eden was just cursing, and I love that Susie kept calling her out on language.
Hmm.
All that was so funny to me. uh oh, what was it, America Tendo? um again, and I was discussing it with Soph only because I was like, okay, we're gonna go with it because of what they have. I understand it's for a plot, but a especially in the time allotted, that freezer would not have worked well as a sensory deprivation tank.
That would have been cold as shit.
It would have been way too cold, and that's part of the point of a sensory dep tank, is that the water has to be
It's
your
lukewarm,
body
room
temperature. Like,
temperature. Yeah.
it's exactly, it's supposed to be 98.6. That's why you don't feel it, your body, like, that's um so I had issue with that, but at the same time, I was willing to let it go. Even though I noticed it, I just didn't care. And
Hmm.
sometimes stuff like that really takes me out of stuff if I'm not invested in it, because it just gets on my nerves. I'm like, like, it's such a glaringly, like, fuck you. It just wouldn't work. Um, Eddie on top of the trailer playing Master of Puppets
Yeah, it's
was
dope.
such a cool moment, and it was such a great moment for that character. you know you like Eddie because he's Dustin's best friend. He's a dungeon master, and he's getting the shaft because he's the weird freak, which being hunted by the jock bullies. So you already have that going for Eddie. You already like him because of that. But just the way he comes around, and the whole you know um I didn't run away this time, and him dying in Dustin's lap
Hmm.
like that. Now,
His
it's just
line there
phenomenal.
is unscripted too. The
Oh,
whole
it was it?
I love you, man.
Oh, it's
Yeah,
awesome. Oh, it's
yeah.
so awesome.
That one, and when Lucas is screaming for his sister when he told Max, that was unscripted also.
Oh, that's great. Okay, so Lucas, and this is what I didn't know. And so I'm going to take back something I said when we first talked about Stranger Things. I had said that I felt like Lucas was the weakest actor, and that he kind of, he comes around a little bit as the seasons grow. I'm actually going to go back on that after finding out a little more about that actor. And postscript. So Stella only watched season 4 with us, the 10-year-old. She is now obsessed with it. So this weekend, while Sophia is away at cheer camp, Stella and I have started rewatching Stranger Things, the two of us, from the beginning. Right? Lucas, I think my issue with Lucas was I felt like his line deliveries were kind of stilted. I was like, hey, he's a child actor and this and that. I think it was the writing and what they gave him. Because when you look at Lucas's history, that cat was playing young Simba on Broadway in The Lion King. He had a number of credits under his belt. He was a very professional working actor leading up to this. And so I feel like maybe it was actually just the way it was written, because I still felt in watching it with Stella that in that moment, in those first few episodes, he is the weaker of the of the child actors. But I look at it and I go, they really didn't give Lucas much to say or do. And I feel like a lot of Lucas also, unfortunately, um Caleb, I'm forgetting his last name, isn't kind of getting the props on season 4 that he may deserve because Max was so fucking good. Sadie Sink was so
Mm-hmm.
amazing. I really felt though Lucas was also incredibly strong this
Mm-hmm.
season. His whole thing with the basketball team and just all the stuff he's playing with there and him and Max getting back together. Like I felt like this is like you were saying, like we were talking about with Max and L. I don't buy Max and L as a
Yeah.
couple. Even like I think that's part of it.
And Mike
Lucas,
and L.
yeah, Max and Lucas, I buy that.
Yeah,
Like even the
because they've
older
gone through their
version of
shit. Because when they first started to get together, it was is it Dustin and Max, or is it, you know, there you had your little,
yes,
your kids love triangle thing, and they got through that, and then, you know, they've been through their shit.
yeah. Um, I think one of the smaller Easter eggs that I don't know a lot of people caught, as I say, I don't know if a lot of people caught it because I go by what's been memed or what gets posted on Facebook as in terms of things that people kind of noticed. Dustin, as they're preparing for the final battle, his little outfit with the kind of ghillie suit almost and the
Mm-hmm.
the sweatshirt with band pulled up by the bandana, that is Patrick Swayze's costuming from the end of Red Dawn. And I saw it the minute Dustin popped up in it and they're getting ready for it and they start doing it. I was like, holy shit, he looks like Dally. Like it's fucking Dallas in Red Dawn. Like it was so funny to me. And I've pointed it out to people who are like, God, I don't remember. I don't remember. I'm like, go back and look. I said, and Red Dawn is one of those movies that, like, you know, as a Gen X kid, you, especially as a boy, um, we watched that movie. I can't, we wore out a VHS tape. Like it was one of the first VHS tapes that we ever bought. And we watched it so many times, we actually wore out the goddamn tape. That's one of those movies that is one of my favorite movies. It that's for a whole nother episode. We can talk about that because the fucking remake they did of it's a fucking botched back
Oh yeah,
alley
it was
abortion.
garbage.
That's fucking crap. Take the whole weird like had to switch, you know, to Koreans from Chinese. Like I was like, really? That's what was bad about this movie? How about the rest of the plot that you somehow fucked up, even though like the movie from the 80s gave you the goddamn plot. Like you didn't have to
Mm-hmm.
redo too much. Like that was the other okay, no, that's for another night. I'm not going to go off on that tangent
Mm-hmm.
because we're talking about Stranger Things. um yeah, I love the end of it. All the stuff in Russia, we have two new friends with Enzo and Yuri. I think that Yuri winds up coming around. He was fucking funny as hell,
He
you know,
was
the
funny.
peanut butter smuggler. You wind up liking Enzo,
Mm-hmm.
you know. I
For me,
absolutely,
it was pretty early on. I liked him. Um, Maybe not right away, but pretty quick. I did.
you knew he was going to be more, and
Mm-hmm.
you knew Hopper's escape was going to be botched and failed somehow. I honestly did not see Yuri stabbing them in the back until it happened. Like that was a nice little surprise for me because I was like, son of a bitch. Because I figured they were going to fly that plane over and we were going to have some sort of issue with the plane and they were going to wind up crashing in another part of Siberia. And, you know, we're going to wind up having the Demogorgon hunting Hopper as he's tried to escape the prison through the woods. And that's when they're all going to meet up. And I was so wrong with that one. But the church with all the American goods was fucking hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the flamethrower, that all the Russia stuff was great, and it had the potential to just be stupid, and it wasn't. It all worked very well. Hopper with the flamethrower was the awesomest shit. Even better than Hopper with the flamethrower, though. Did you notice the sword
The
Hopper?
Conan sword.
That's the Conan the Barbarian sword. I saw
It's
that shit. I
not.
was like,
It's
fuck
not just
yeah.
a remake though. I think it's the
Is that the
actual
actual
sword.
prop?
Yeah.
That's savage. That is awesome. But I pay like the minute I saw the sword on the ground, and I was like, "Yo, that's Conan's sword!" Like, so all that stuff was great, man. The Hopper and L reunion at the end, of the episode was just
Hmm.
heartwarming and touching.
Well, even like
Um,
it was subtle, but when she first goes into the room, she leaves the door open
the
three
door
inches.
open.
You know.
You didn't, and she says it to him. And
Hmm.
again, okay, so here's how that went down for us watching it. So it was very, we're watching. We get to it was a Monday morning, and we finished through the end of the season except for that episode Sunday night, and it was like Sunday night at 11 o'clock, and it was like, okay, it's summer, so if you guys Stella, even though you're 10, if you want to stay up late, we'll do it. But then we realized, we're like, okay, we can't, because this last episode is fucking 2.5 hours. It's like watching Infinity War,
Hmm.
right? We'll get up and we'll do it in the morning. So we got almost there. We got through the final battle, and Soph had to leave to go to lacrosse practice. So Stella and I finished watching it, and it's so satisfying, and you're so happy. But I didn't. Elle said the thing about the 3 inches, and then when Soph got home 3 hours later, we had it queued up to the part where she had watched it from, and we watch it back. And I looked, and I caught that. I was like, holy shit, she did have the door open 3 inches. Um, I love that whole little dynamic there. Uh, the Dustin talking to Creel's, or talking to Eddie's uncle, was such another like heartbreaking moment,
Hmm.
because you could just tell this guy cared about his nephew so much, and
Hmm.
knew that Eddie, he wasn't the troubled kid, he was the different kid. He was the
Yeah.
poor kid. He, like the whole thing with like, oh, well, Eddie's that freak drug dealer. Okay, slow your roll. Eddie sold some weed. If Eddie was a drug dealer worth any salt, he wouldn't have been searching his house for the ketamine he stashed. Okay, especially back in the 80s, because that was not that big a drug at that time period yet. Ketamine didn't kind of come into fashion, if you will, until the late 80s, early 90s, with the rave scene going on, because it's a dissociative hallucinogen when you take it in a dose that gets you high, like high. So it's what he was giving it to Chrissy for would not have been a bad thing for what she wanted.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's also not a drug that in the mid 80s you would have had and forgotten where it was, especially if you were selling drugs. So that, just the whole mythology behind Eddie was
Yeah, and
great.
I didn't feel like, I think when he was offering it to her, he also wasn't really offering it as a drug dealer at that point.
Mm-mm.
He was offering it as a bit of a friend, like, you know.
Yes. Oh, I was sad when Chrissy died in his
Mhm.
trailer, because I really, up until they killed her. I mean, it's only 20 minutes apart in the scene, but you really thought like, oh, this is going to be a fun like storyline of the cheerleader. They're going to introduce this Chrissy girl, and there's the dickhead boyfriend, but there's obviously like a fun connection between her and Eddie, and we're going to get
Mhm.
another love try. I'm like, this could be kind of cool. I said, like, it's a lot of characters to add here, but this will be interesting. And then they fucking Chrissy crumble her, and she
Well,
just,
and she was, and she's pretty and she's talented. Like she was a good little
yeah,
actress, so that doesn't seem like somebody you'd bring in and just wipe out. But it's Duffer Brothers, they don't care.
yeah.
They don't care about
They're
your feelings.
No, they are Game of Thrones esque in their like ability to just fucking kill somebody off. Even though, when you really think about it, when you actually look at the the body count of main characters that actually mean something in the show, it's actually
It's pretty
really
low.
low.
Yeah.
It's like, really, it's what it's I mean, it's really, because you could kind of put Barb in that category, but not really, because Barb was in fucking half an episode before she died.
Yeah.
Realistically, like, she's a
But
fun character.
you didn't watch it when it started. There was a whole like bring back Barb movement when she
I
died,
I
when
remember
the
it.
show
Yeah.
started.
Um. So you've got Barb. You've got um, Eddie and Bob are
Mm-hmm.
really, I mean, like, I guess on some way an argument could be made for, what's his bucket, the fucking nerd that was involved in the car crash, who was one of Vecna's victims.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, uh,
He wasn't in it enough either,
so
though.
okay, now this, and I never went back to check on it. I haven't Googled it. The kid in the car crash that burns up, Sophia had the theory, or kind of said, like, isn't that the kid who was trying to make Dustin jump into the quarry in season one? And I was like, I don't know. I need to find that out. I need to Google it and find it, because there's got to be some connection in there to the rest of the story as a whole, even though I know technically, no, well, no, Chrissy's got a great connection because it's with Eddie. I know that the other dude, that they killed, that Vecna kills, who was the basketball player that was one of the ones that was chasing him, like, same, like, he didn't really have much of a backstory or an involvement there, but there's that kid in the fire. Like, I feel like they give us that kid, they give us his trauma like right away. His dad's a drunk that beats him. All right,
Mm-hmm.
boom. Okay, I buy that. But to give this kid this whole, like, how, like, guilt over making it out of a burning car, like, that whole storyline was way too detailed for me in the big, at that point, for it to not have another connection to another part of the series somewhere. Um, but God, I can't. Season four, it just a great season. That final episode, I mean, you just Elle versus Vecna, like, Max, the whole dance thing, that fight in there was great. Um, Max almost dying, but winding up being in a coma. All the kids coming, like, everything was wrapped up very nicely, but still raw and emotionally open.
You
um
have
and then,
Will with
oh,
with Mike in the car,
Mike,
like showing him
that
the picture and all that.
the whole, yeah,
Mm.
you're the heart. Okay, so here's where it got,
That's a little cheesy, yeah.
well, here's the thing. That part was cheesy, but at the same time, I'm watching that and I'm going, oh shit, Will's in love with Mike. Like,
Mm-hmm.
this, it's not just like you're
But
watching
I
it and
knew that in
that's what you
season
get.
two.
See,
If you're
I
watching, no, if you're watching with your daughter, there's a scene in season two when they go out, um, and it's raining, it's pouring down rain outside,
I know the scene
and
you're
Will's
talking
trying
about.
to.
Yeah.
If you watch it, he is telling him right then, like but he doesn't understand it. He just knows that he
Mm-mm.
doesn't want him to go with Elle,
L, yeah.
and it's not about D&D.
No.
It's about them. And I remember even the first time I saw it, I was like, that kid's gay for that kid. Like,
See,
and not in a bad way. I just knew it.
exactly. And I know the scene you're talking about, and I don't want to say I didn't pick up on it, but the Duffer Brothers did a very good job of almost hiding it, because that's one of the scenes, because Lucas is with Max at that point, and that's one of the scenes where, Mike has lied to Elle at this point, and
Mm-hmm.
is Lucas is trying to tell him how to fix the relationship, and if that was the whole D&D explosion. And so for me, I took that whole segment as, this is the kid who's just immature and isn't into girls yet, and his buddies have moved on, so he's still, he's like, you know fuck, guys, why can't we just watch, this movie for the 18, like you do before the rest of, before your buddies
Well, it
start
wasn't just
going
that
into
too.
that.
Like he lost, he lost a period of his life,
Oh yeah.
in the Upside Down, but and he just wants the chance to be a kid.
Oh,
But like I knew in that scene in season two when it aired for the first time, I was like, yeah.
well, and that's okay. So here, and then this is one of those funny things that plays right, like I don't want to say against like gay stereotypes, but that's kind of funny to me because we come back in season 4 after the time period now, and it's cool because they're again the Duffer Brothers in their brilliance. We now have, the Byers kids and Elle are living out in California, and it's either months or at least a year. Was it a year later or for sure months later? I
Somewhere
know
in
that
there,
it's
yeah.
it's a chunk of time because I love that Mike's voice is virtually the same as it was. It's a little deeper, but Will has gone from a fucking soprano to a
Yeah.
baritone.
He's
Like
like
Will got
6'8".
some
Like he's
bass in his voice. Like
yeah.
like this was a growth spurt and a half. Oh, and one of my favorite moments in season 4, and it was like it was satisfying but almost not enough when Elle smacks Angela with the fucking
Oh, dude.
skate.
For
Oh, I
me, like I know
love that.
I know she's not supposed to do that, but when she did it, I was like, look at that bitch
Oh,
had it coming. I was like,
yes.
sorry, you
It
were
was
a bitch.
anybody who is ever, which, to hear everybody talk about it from their adolescent days, we all feel this way to some degree, but to anybody who has ever been felt like they've been made fun of by a group of people and bullied, to see someone stand up for themselves so violently, like, and let's be real, I'm sorry, she deserved it.
Mm-hmm.
Straight up what they
She had
did
it
there,
coming.
and that was, and it was also, again, and this was one of those like weird, like, suspend your disbelief. Like, she does that, and there's not a single person in that skating rink who saw what had happened before with the bullying and
Right.
the shake and this and that wasn't going to stick up for Elle and be like, no, this little blonde bitch right here
Mm-hmm.
and her little friends, look, they got the shit on videotape. Look at what they did to her. Like, like,
Yeah.
and then it's another one of those moments that I said, okay, I'm just gonna let it go because it just really is. It's a MacGuffin in so many ways to just move the plot along, because we have to have a fun way for the FBI to get Elle. The fact that a minor was talked to without a parent present, a minor was being moved to a juvenile detention facility without a parent being, without any sort of a arraignment, any with a public defense, like there's like due process and civil rights for a minor with Elle were completely thrown out the window by these cops.
Mm-hmm.
And I get where, like the town they're living in is supposed to be kind of like high desert, Central Valley ish, maybe near Bakersfield, California. Like it's supposed to be that kind of vibe. Like we're definitely in Southern California, but I didn't like, maybe some little town, north of LA, like San Bernardino or like, something in that area. Like that's what you're getting. Where the fuck is this juvenile detention facility that these people are driving like out in the middle of nowhere? Like I I mean, part of it's just because of my job and I've had to do stuff. I can tell you exactly where the juvenile detention facility is in like Alameda County that they would take young kids. Like it's not in the middle of fucking nowhere.
Yeah.
We have,
No.
in fact, and that's what's funny. I don't think people realize this about prisons in America, because we all, you watch the TV shows like Supermax Prison. It's out in the middle of nowhere. I'm like, yeah, aside from Santa Rita, there's a federal women's maximum security prison right out there in Dublin in the same place. In downtown Oakland, there's another federal max prison that you can see from the freeway. You can actually see uh, a maximum security prison when you're driving through Stockton. It's right next to the freeway. Like prisons are in your backyard, folks. Not out in the middle of nowhere like y'all like to think. So that was kind of, again, just one of those moments. But I was like, but if you didn't have that out in the middle of nowhere, You don't have that fun scene with the FBI.
Hmm.
You don't get Paul Reiser coming out as Owens the same way. Like, um, all the Nina stuff was fun. All of that stuff with Elle going back. I love the scene in the diner with Owens and Elle. That was just cool. She's like, you have the option. Like, what do you want to do? This is, you know, um, Argyle again. I can't. That cat is just too funny. Oh, did you call that phone number?
No.
It's worth it to call. So we called it. It's funny because we called it like we're watching the show, and it cuts to the flyer, and my daughter goes, you can call that number. I was like, shut up. She's all, yeah, it's, it's, and I stopped and I paused it and I looked and I realized, holy shit, it's not a 555
Yeah, it's not
number.
five.
So you call it, and it's just a recording, but it's Argyle answering, talking, and he goes through this whole spiel, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, that's so funny. Close it. When the FBI agents call Pizza Dude, it's like from the recording, the first half of the recording is Argyle's exact spiel. Hey, this is Argyle, pineapple on the pizza, like that whole bullshit. It was so funny. And then, so that's worth it to call. Well, here, you know what? I think I have that somewhere in here because it'll be worth it, people, for you to call. You'll get a kick out of this. It's really, really fun. Let me find the phone number for you. Write this down. So, it is in. Oh, you know what? We were trying to figure out where that town that they're supposed to be is. So the phone number for Pizza Dude is 805-457-4992, which is a San Luis Obispo, a slow area code, that 805. Now, if you call 618-625-8313, you will get Murray's answering machine. Now, both of these phone calls last about a minute. Like, it's, you call and it's just about a minute long. And then, since we were doing it, when they gave them the phone number that they're supposed to hack, in there's that they give Susie to dial into, which is 202-968-6161. That is a Washington D.C. phone number. And it does that one. Honestly, that one's just a fun little Easter egg. It really doesn't do anything. You get like some modem noises and some clicking, and it lasts for like 2 minutes, and it's a fun little Easter egg. But there's like I definitely recommend calling the first two if you're a fan, just because it's fun. It's just extra little bit. You don't have to call the other one because it's just light modem noise. Like, it's not, the call's not worth it. But the other two, definitely call. Kevin, we'll put that in the show notes. But those, that little stuff is hilarious. I'm sad that we have to wait this long for season 5. That we're gonna have to wait time, because like, I'm ready to go. When the kids walk up over the hill and you look out, and the town of Hawkins is basically fucking on fire and ash is falling from the sky. I love how they call it. That was also one of my favorite. It's a seismic event.
Yeah, they've done a pretty poor job of covering that shit up like 3 times now.
Yeah, I'm like,
the first time it was like, oh, there was a gas leak.
Yeah,
like,
I'm like,
right.
I get the idea of a seismic event, but, and maybe, okay, maybe it's just me, because I grew, like, my dad was a geologist that works for Chevron. My stepmom was a geologist before she came to high school. I grew up with fossils in my house. I knew, like, before we even moved to California at 10 years old, I knew about the San Andreas fault and fault lines in California, and like all the stuff that involved, just from conversations with my dad about shit that was lying around the house. Like, this was just common general knowledge to me. So the idea of a massive seismic event like that in Indiana, I was like, even in the 80s, guys from the USGS would have been like, no, unless you want to call it possibly a volcano, maybe, but this was not a seismic earthquake event. There's no fault line. There's no nothing near Indiana. There's no, they weren't fracking yet. So there's like this doesn't make sense. But it's funny because you have all the people leaving. I love that when they're in Argyle's van, you see
Hmm.
all the people leaving Hawkins, and then you get there and the town, props to the Wheeler family, mom's
Just
Wheeler, and
donating their
even
shit. Yeah.
donating and just still hanging out and trusting their kids. Man, when they had that PTA meeting, like that community meeting,
Hmm.
like I felt for those parents, because all those parents are sitting there going, my kids are not Satanists. And the only one that would say anything for them was the fucking, 12-year-old little girl.
Yeah.
And
This is
everybody was like,
bullshit.
hush. I love that.
She's
Erica
so fucking.
Sinclair. Oh my God. Um, but yeah, I can't wait for season 5. The town of Hawkins is basically fucking burning now. So here's one that's a theory that's kind of a fan-ish theory, but then also um, would fit very, very well. But I think because it is such an on the nose kind of thing, the Duffers might avoid it. And I don't think they're going to do what a lot of us want them to do. So in the Vecna mythology, in the whole D&D world, if you will, Vecna had a right-hand man named Kaz. And Kaz actually betrays and slays Vecna's lich body form. And then Kaz kind of disappears, but there's this whole thing with these artifact weapons that he leaves behind. Well, one of the theories is that um, Eddie is going to be brought back to life by Vecna and become Kaz, and in a way, the Kaz type entity, and turn on him and save the day. Although I would love that, I think it would be a fun little thing. I don't think they're going to do that. I legitimately, folks, I'm sorry. I think this is the last we've seen of Eddie, except in flashbacks. I
Yeah.
think if you bring Eddie back, it cheapens his death to me. I
Hmm.
really do. Even if you bring him back as an undead zombie, if he comes back as anything more than a flashback, or maybe he does come back as like a zombie for a moment, in as much as like there's a vision that Dustin or somebody else sees of like just a jacked up Eddie, in the moment kind of thing. Um, Otherwise, like it just to me it cheapens the sacrifice and Eddie's death and the development of that character and how fun it was. But I am super looking forward to season 5, because I mean, this is it. Like, shit's about to go down. There's no more mystery. It is like the apocalypse is happening in Hawkins right now, and these kids know what's going on, even though they're cleaning up Hopper's house, because apparently that's going to be the new, Hopper Byers household. Um, Fucking A. I don't know if I ever talked about it on the show here. I may have. It may have been in like pre-show. I swear to God, I would watch a Stranger Things Terminator crossover just to watch Nancy and fucking Sarah
Sarah Connor.
Connor roll around just killing shit. Because Nancy, man, with the shotgun, like the whole thing, she is such a badass character. And we'll dump back to the first half of season 4 again, just to double back to what we are talking about. When Robin and Nancy are in the psychologist's office and Robin has her little meltdown, that is such an awesome moment. And Maya Hawke is a very interesting looking woman. She's beautiful, but even when you see pictures of her outside of, Stranger Things, um very pretty, but it's very neat because she doesn't take after either her mother or her father. She's really a good combination of both of them. Like, I see
Hmm.
Uma and Ethan in there. Like you look at Liv Tyler, she obviously takes after BB Buell, right? Like she looks nothing like her fucking dad. You look at, you look at a lot of the kids of, these celebrities, and it's very like, okay, any sorry, she's kind of hot, but Rumor Willis looks just like her dad. Like I can't, like I look at her and I'm like, like it's obvious you got your mom, you got your mom's body there. You're a very pretty girl, you know, but like your head is like your dad's head. Like
Yeah.
it's like you've got what's her bucket's face on Bruce Willis's. It's Demi Moore's face on Bruce Willis's head, and it looks very weird. It's like it's a original weird face swap
Well,
that went on.
I think of Maya Hawke as almost the reverse of Emilio Estevez and Charlie Sheen. Like
Yes,
they don't look like each other, but they both look exactly like their dad somehow.
somehow, yeah,
Like
exactly.
it's crazy. And she's like that. Like I think if you saw her just with her dad, you'd be like, oh, she looks just like her dad. And then if you saw her with
But
her
if
mom, you'd be like, shit, she looks just like her mom. You
like
know
her
what I mean?
mom,
Like
yeah.
it's crazy.
But she's another one. Like you watch it, and there's a big future for her
Mm-hmm.
in Hollywood. This is not like again, Gaten Matarazzo, Dustin, he actually already has another show that he's already done. It's a
And
prank show,
he's
and it's
on
fun.
Broadway, or is going to be on Broadway, or was
Yeah.
on Broadway.
Yeah, like he's got a future there. I think Finn Wolfhard after this may still do some more acting, but he's also got a band that he's into. Like I think, I've watched interviews with him, and he's very, I don't want to say blasé about the whole thing, but he's very like just kind of whatever.
Well, I think maybe it was Andrew that pointed it out, but he's like, or maybe it was you, but he's like the poor man's Timothy Chalamet. Like they look exactly the same, and Chalamet is more talented. So
I think Andrew pointed that out. I just
yeah,
we've talked about something similar to that before. Yeah, no, that's what are you chewing on here? Okay, that's your bone. That's good. Um, that's a great analogy because I and I'm sure there are female listeners, and I actually wish Kim was here for this one. Um, I don't. I'm sorry, I don't get the attraction to Adam Driver. Like he's physically, yes, he's a very built dude, and I've watched the little bits of you know of girls that I can stand that he was in. Um, he's just a very interesting dude. Like girls
mm-hmm.
swoon over him, and I'm like, why? Like I get like we were joking about this in our text thing about the movie that Andy watched called That Awkward Moment, right? Which is a really good rom com, but it's got Michael B. Jordan, Miles Teller, and what's his bucket? Uh, Zac Efron. Okay, all three of those dudes are very good looking guys.
Mm-hmm.
I completely get that. I just don't get the Adam Driver thing. Like I can't not that he's supposed to do something for me, but like I look at Zac Efron, and I look at, women have been going nutty banana shit over Miles Teller with the mustache from Top Gun.
Yeah, well, because
like,
he fucking looks exactly like fucking what's his face.
It's okay. So yeah, it's funny because I've been watching some episodes of ER. And so Anthony Edwards is Dr. Green, right there at the beginning of that. And you look at him, and even without the mustache, it's like you're like, oh shit, Miles Teller could be his kid even just with this. But with that mustache, you're like, oh, which reminds me, did you see that meme? One of the funniest fucking memes. It was right around Top Gun, and it's like two pictures side by side. One of them is Miles Teller in Top Gun, and and the top caption is, the day after Top Gun, all y'all's boyfriends went out and started growing a mustache thinking they'll look like this, and it's Miles Teller. And then the next frame is, but they all gonna wind up looking like this, and it's Farva from Super Troopers.
I did see that one.
Mustache. And it was like, I was like, well, that is highly accurate.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't get that anyway. But Finn Wolfhard's kind of like that for me. I think also part of it maybe for Finn Wolfhard. I think they're I don't know. At least Mike, the costuming for all intents and purposes, this is definitely a period piece, and they do
Oh, for
incredibly
sure.
well with costumes. I love that they put Mike in clothes. It is exactly what a Indiana Midwestern mother would buy her son, because it's what you think people in California dress like, right? Like I can
Mhm.
remember when we moved to California when I was 10, I told people, yeah, I'm moving to California out by San Francisco. And everybody instantly, because of the view on California, was right on. You're going to learn how to surf? And I was like, sure, maybe. And then we're here. And in the first week of being here, we go to San Francisco and kind of get the layout of Northern California. And we go to the beach. And I'm like, no, I am not going to learn to surf in this fucking cold
Mm-mm.
ass water up here.
Well, it's like moving out here, all the way
Oh,
across
yeah.
the country. People all the time, they're like, why did you leave California? And I was like, dude, California is not what you think. If you're
No.
not from California, you don't get it. Because if you are from outside California, you think of San Diego, you think of LA,
LA.
and you think of San Francisco. Those are the three things you think of when you think of California. And
or
that's
or
it.
or if you know even a little bit, like you think of Yosemite or the
Maybe.
redwoods,
Yeah.
like it'll conjure
But
ideas. But
or Tahoe, but
yeah,
nobody thinks of Fresno. Nobody thinks of Bakersfield. Nobody like California is a desert.
yeah,
California, most of California kind of sucks.
yeah,
like,
no, it really
like
does. And
really,
people,
like
yeah, well, that's what's funny. It's also like you don't think about it on the East Coast, but like California also encompasses like the same distance from like Boston to like the Florida Panhandle. Like it's the
yeah,
entire eastern seaboard is California.
yeah.
People don't realize that. That's why it's funny to me. And having driven on the East Coast, I do understand it because it's a little bit different. But when people talk about like, oh yeah, it's gonna take us like 3 days to drive from New York to Miami. I'm like, how the fuck is it gonna take you 3 days to drive from New York to Miami? I'm like, that's like that's like driving from San Francisco. It's like 500-600 miles. I'm like,
Yeah.
bruh, that's like driving to Disney. How is it gonna take you 3 days? I'm like, I'm there in
It
six
is
hours.
it's a little longer, but I mean,
It,
you could do it in a 24-hour day for sure.
yeah,
Like it's
but
yeah.
part of it is also though the way roads are set up on the East Coast, which people don't realize, because we have, you've got five, you've got one, these like cover California like straight through from top to
Mhm.
bottom basically, whereas on the East Coast there are some interstates, but they turn to 2-lane roads in a lot of places. You've got a lot of state maintained highways, and there isn't anything that is a straight shot. Now, I know there's someone reflexively out there that's going to go, but wait a minute, what about Highway A1A from Florida? Yes, but A1A doesn't cut that same way, and it becomes different freeways, and it becomes
Mhm.
much smaller roads in certain, states as it goes. And they don't like I try to it's again I try to make people from the East Coast understand this, because to go, so if you were going to drive from like the Florida Georgia line to your house, the number of freeways that I
Oh, it
would
would
have
be
to get
insane.
on
It would be insane.
would be insane. Now in California, to literally traverse the state from top to bottom, I get on five,
Hmm.
and that's it.
Yeah, you
Yes,
can go
yes,
from
when you
like
get to
fucking Redding, which is top of
almost as north
California,
as you can go, down to San
to
Diego.
LA to San Diego. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you really, if you want to avoid traffic, you could take five, but once you get down through LA, you're better jumping on 405 to get the rest of the way to San Diego, because that five, it cuts inland. It's really messy. Anyway,
Yeah.
um, but it's a straight fucking shot, and I like that's the other thing that we were talking when we're talking about like how why it takes so long to get up the East Coast is because there isn't a road that just goes bloop, like
Yeah.
straight through. And which is the other reason we're about to get political here, which is why I never understood why they wanted to build that fucking bullet train. Like, I got it, but I didn't get it. I was like, nobody needs to commute that fast from LA through the Central Valley so I can get from LA to Modesto in 2 hours. Who gives a shit? I'm still fucking 3 hours away from anybody cares about if I'm in fucking Modesto. Like, yeah, but I digress, because we were talking about Stranger Things, and we're almost done, because I don't want to beat it, because I know you guys have talked about it a lot in the last few episodes, but I absolutely love this show. It is it's really hard for me, because it's fighting Ted Lasso for my opinion on like the best show on television right now, because the two of them are like neck and neck for me. That like I'm eagerly anticipating the next and final season for both of those shows. Yeah, Stranger Things is just great, just fucking great. Like, I can't talk enough. I'm so pissed off that Sadie Sink got fucking hosed um for an Emmy nomination. um God, I want, in my dream world, the Duffer Brothers will take over the Star Wars universe. I would love to see the
I don't think
Duffer
it's right
Brothers.
for them. I want to see them. I want to see them duke it out with Mike Flanagan for horror supremacy for the next decade.
I
Because
could see that.
Mike Flanagan did Haunting of Hill House, Bly Manor,
Mm-hmm.
and Midnight Mass, which is my fucking big Oscar snub. I do
Oh, you were
not
talking about that,
understand.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't understand how Midnight Mass didn't get something. Hamish Linklater was fucking amazing in that. Like,
Okay,
he
see,
just hands down deserved an Emmy.
Hamish Linklater, if you're a Hamish Linklater fan, you need to see, and anybody who's out there, Hamish Linklater fan, one of his very first movies that not a lot of people know about, because it's also one of Nick Offerman's very first movies. It's a movie called Groove. It was made, I want to say it was from might be even a little bit earlier than that, but I think it was released in 2000. Not a lot of people know about it. It was very big in the Bay Area, because it is the story of an underground rave in the Bay Area in it's one night, this story of this one party, and it perfectly encapsulates the Bay Area rave scene in the mid to late 90s. It's so much fun. But Hamish Linklater is in it. You've got like, there's a bunch, like, you'll recognize a lot of people in this movie that you'll be like, holy shit, holy shit, holy shit. Like, there's a few people in it. Like, I'm the girl who plays opposite Hamish Linklater, the character's name is Layla. Give me 2 seconds, because she's been in other stuff that you'll be like, oh shit, that was that girl. She was with Hamish Linklater in that. Mackenzie Fergans, who you'd recognize, like, if you saw her in stuff. She plays this girl Harmony in that movie. Ari Gold is in that. He plays a character named Rachel True from she's the black girl from The Craft.
Okay.
She was in that. Okay, Lola Glaudini is the actress's name, and you would know her. Let's see. So, God, let's see. What would you? Okay, so she was on 29 episodes of Criminal Minds as Elle Greenaway. She was on 10 episodes of Ray Donovan. She was on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Like, you recognize this girl. She was on an episode of Franklin and Bash, which is a completely recognized show that nobody wants to talk about. She's done a ton of work, but it's another one of these, like, it's just this first movie. Go out and watch it. It's fucking great. But anyway, Black Mass.
Yeah.
It's weird. The Emmys usually, I'm not super disappointed with nominations. I get disappointed with winners sometimes, but
Mm-hmm.
usually usually the Emmys at least get the nominations, like the nominations pretty right. Like it's like there's snubs this year, like legitimately that I'm looking at. Like you said, Black Mass, and from everything you've talked about on the show, I'm like, how could this not have an Emmy nomination? It's fine if it doesn't want to win. And look, I know it's that old joke about award shows. Like everybody's like, oh, it's just an honor to be nominated. Let's be real. In so many ways, especially for the Emmys, in the Oscars, it's a little more rough. I think if you're nominated, you really, really want to win. Unless except in those years where there's like some phenomenal fucking movie. Like I think it was like it was rough for me. I think I think it was the same year. Um, I can tell you what it is actually because it was a huge snub to me. But the um the year that Malcolm X came out, I saw that. I was because so many kids who are into hip hop in the Bay Area, especially white kids in the 90s, went through a phase where we thought we were black. Or you want to be, because it was the 90s. It was the Wild West. Don't ask. This was the interesting thing, though. Most kids would say, imitate the harder gangster style with the Tupacs, the Snoop Dogs, and like that's what they were emulating. I was all into like De La Soul and the hippie backpack Daisy Age, polka dot. Like I had a Malcolm X hat. I wore cross colors. I had a leather, you know, Back to Africa medallion. Oh, you fucking dog. No, you are not allowed to play with this. Anyway, I'm back. Okay, so the whole point of that was I was super hyped to see Malcolm X in theaters. And my parents, who were very like progressive for the most part in a lot of ways, took our entire family minus my little brother just because he was way too young for it to see this. Um, oh yeah, so this is yeah, it's exactly what it was. So that same year, it was nominated, but for Best Picture, but it came up against that was the year Silence of the Lambs came out. That was 1992, and Silence of the Lambs won fucking everything that year. Plus, you had the other nominees for Best Picture that year. Like it didn't even get the nominee for Best Picture because you had Beauty and the Beast. Oh wait, you know what? Hold on, that actually doesn't make sense. Um, because I am looking at the 1992 Oscars, which would have been actually films from 1991.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that 1991, that was a phenomenal year for the Oscars, and you feel bad um for any. Oh yeah, so this is what. Okay, so that was the 65th that they would have been, and I'm almost 100% positive it got nominated in here, and it was just very annoying to me. So yeah, so that's Al Pacino won for Scent of a Woman. Marissa Tomei, that was the year she won for My Cousin
My
Vinny.
cousin Vinny.
Yeah, but I mean, so yeah, I think okay, yeah, no. So Denzel got his nomination for Malcolm X, which he completely deserved. But he was going up against Stephen Ray from The Crying Game, Clint Eastwood from Unforgiven, Robert Downey Jr. as Chaplin, and the Al Pacino from Scent of a Woman. There's no chance. Like it just wasn't going to happen. And you look at the Best Picture nominees, you get why it wasn't even nominated, because you got the winner Unforgiven, you got The Crying Game, you've got A Few Good Men, Howard's End, and Scent of a Woman. Like it was the wrong year for that movie to be out to win an Oscar. Yeah, I have no idea where I was going with that. Oh no, That's what we were talking about. So usually Oscars is known to fuck shit up all over the place. Like every time the Oscar nominations come out, in the past when I paid attention to a lot of the Oscar nominated movies, um like there was always something that I was like, how did this not get nominated? How did this not get nominated? The Emmys and the Golden Globes usually get it right, at least with the nominations. I may disagree with the winners here and there, but the nominations they at least get right. Oscars are always fucking it up. This year, like, I'm sorry, even with all the nominations that Stranger Things got, Sadie Sink, and some people are saying Millie Bobby Brown, but I go back and forth with that.
I don't see that. I don't. She's so, and maybe it's the character, but I've seen her in the Godzilla films too. Um, she's pretty one note. Like I'm not impressed by her as an actress.
And I know it's funny, yeah, and I get that it makes sense, especially early on for Elle to be one note. Like I kind of get that, and there is lots of emotion there. Here's the thing though, and she's of legal age now, so I can say this without being creepy. That is a beautiful young woman. You don't think so?
No, you're always creepy. It doesn't matter what you say.
Oh, that, yeah.
No, it's funny. She reminds me when I look at her right now of a young Kate Beckinsale.
Yes,
like she looks similar. Like her features are similar, and she is pretty, and she cleans up. Very pretty, and she's super young. Like I don't look at her.
I know what you mean
in the way that like I look at Kate Beckinsale. I look at Kate Beckinsale, and I'm like, let's sit down for a minute, Kate. Let's have a talk. Millie Bobby Brown. I'm like, where are your parents? And my biggest fear for her is that she is pretty, and she prettied up, she started with the short hair. She's a huge deal. Like my biggest fear for her is that same fear that you have when you look back at Drew Barrymore's career. You look at who's Hayden Panettiere, I guess, went off the rails. Like she had a bunch of problems. Like I worry about those people, if the celebrity is too much too young, because it's not fair. Totally. Like you're not equipped for that at 10, 12, 15.
Oh, completely. Well, let's talk about that fucking elephant in the room. Have you been paying attention to any of this? Like, and it's pretty much blown over now, but it's just an interesting little Hollywood side note kind of thing. Did you pay any attention to the whole Noah Schnapp Doja Cat thing that went on?
I love it. And she lost 220,000 followers. He gained 1 million. I was like, he's a kid. Shut up. Like
this was the thing that I had with that, because there, like Andrew had posted something on Facebook about it, and a couple people were like, he really did her wrong, and this is unfair for her. I feel that. What he did was kind of a dick move in a way. Like I don't disagree.
I think
with
it
that.
is as an adult. I don't think there was intent there as a kid. I don't think he was out to do that.
He's a 17-year-old kid. He just graduated high school. I have a 15-year-old in my house now. I've had, over the last 6 months, I've had a decent amount of interaction with high school age kids, just from going to lacrosse games and things like that, and school functions. There is these kids, because of COVID, lost in so many ways a good year and a half of social interaction where you grow and learn certain things, and a lot of them missed out on that in way. For all intents and purposes, even though he's 17, he's really more like a 15 and a half, 16-year-old in a lot of ways. But his behavior and doing what he did with the video, which, let's be real, if you watched it before it got pulled down, was actually kind of sweet in a way. Like there was no malice behind it. It was a kid who thought it was kind of, Doja Cat reached out to him for a hookup, And so he showed the picture of it and he did the thing. He like I didn't get the vibe from the video that he was being a dick about it. Like that's not at
Mm-mm.
all the way it was. The bigger problem I have, and this was my thing with it. The fuck is a 26-year-old woman asking a 17-year-old kid to be her wingman? And then when he does some 17-year-old kid shit, the
Getting pissed
way
off
she
about it.
reacted to him, this is I think the problem right now with Hollywood in general and or a lot of young Hollywood is these kids are so used to having their own social media that they feel like they should manage it and they don't stop and go, nope, this is where we should be like old school Hollywood, and I need to get a PR person and they can run my socials. Because Doja Cat, had she not reacted the way she did, would have gained 1 million followers herself.
Mm-hmm.
Like that could have been, if she had laughed about it and been like, "Oh my God, Noah, you're so stupid. Oh, that's silly." Da, 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 da,
Yeah, like she should totally could have laughed it off. Like
she
been
should have.
yes,
Like that's
100%.
and she would have actually gotten more out of it. And look, I understand some people's idea of like, well, it was incredibly disrespectful what he did, and I'm like, I get that. I'm not saying you're wrong. But what I am saying is there's a big difference between a 17-year-old doing something like that and if, say, she had, she slid into Ryan Reynolds' DMs and asked him to, hook her up with one of his co-stars or something. That's a complete, and Ryan Reynolds did well. I mean, that's a bad issue because I think Ryan Reynolds is fucking funny and he'd do something way
Mm-hmm.
funnier than Noah did with it. But like someone of that, ilk and age, if you will, if they put something out there, yeah, that's an ultra dick move. You know way better than to do that without asking her permission. That's a shitty thing to do. This is a 17-year-old kid who didn't know better, who had no idea. And again, she completely misstepped by reacting the way she did. She
Mm-hmm.
could have used this to actually promote herself even more. Because let's be real, Noah Schnapp right now is hot. Stranger Things is hot. It is all over the place. Doja Cat's been around for a while, but she's really just starting to break mainstream where I when you've crossed over into major stardom is when my wife, and more than just a few people our age know about her. When you've hit that point, then you are like you've hit that kind of major star level. Yeah, you know what? I know she's been around for a while. I know a lot of people know about her. I'm not, but it was all YouTube, TikTok, internet
Yeah,
famous.
like I
Like
know
it
she
wasn't.
exists. I don't know why she exists. Like why she's like I
Yeah,
don't know anything about her.
yeah, I knew
It's
about her music a couple years ago. Like she's been around for a while.
mhm.
But this was just a PR fucking fumble Ruski all the way around. But let's, you know what? We've had a lot of fun talking about Stranger Things. We need to move on because I want to hear about Resident Evil and why you've got what's with the weird fucking bubbly shit going on there in the pig. Yeah, like what is it? It looks like some sort of bloody soap bubble. I
Well,
mean,
that's how the virus is spread in Resident Evil, right through bite.
yes.
As with so many zombie monster movies,
Every
whatever.
yeah.
So this show is interesting. It bounces timelines. One of the main actors is Lance Reddick. He
Okay.
was from Fringe. He's from Lost. He's been in a bunch of stuff, and I'm a really big fan. I like him a lot. I don't really recognize anybody else in the show, which I'm okay with. I like fresh blood in shows, especially shows that are probably not going to be great. Let
Mm-hmm.
them get their chance. This show suffers from the same problem, basically, that every video game show or movie suffers from, in that you're walking this fine line between, do you make a show that you don't have to have played the games to appreciate, but also if you played the games, you appreciate the shows or the show more, right? So this does not tie into the Mila Jovovich movies. This is in, or at least feels like it's in, um, it's in the video game world rather than the movie universe, right?
Okay.
So they
But
reference
like,
like the destruction of the original Raccoon City, which is from the video
okay.
games, like
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So they make
So
references to that stuff,
real
but so
quick,
this takes yeah.
so the lead actress in this, the girl who plays Ella,
Mhm.
or Jade Wesker, Ella
Jade, yeah,
Balinska.
she's Ellen. Yeah.
So she was in the new Charlie's Angels movie. She
Okay, yeah,
she
yeah.
was she was Jane from Charlie's Angels. And I'm looking. I recognize a few of these people. Lance Reddick. Oh my god, I love Lance
I
Reddick
love him.
too.
I love him. He's
He's one of
fantastic.
those. He's great in everything he does. He fucking does.
Hmm.
He's amazing. He's another one of those. He's a standout on that show Oz that I'm in love
Mm-hmm.
with. He's got a very small role as an undercover cop in there that he does. He's just amazing. But yeah, everything Lance Reddick
Fringe.
does.
He's a big deal on
Yeah.
Fringe. Like so, yeah, he's been around. But like I said, a lot of fresh faces in this, or at least people I'm not too familiar
Oh,
with.
just a ton. Yeah.
And so it's really interesting because it's two timelines in the story. So you have roughly now where everything's cool. I guess within the timeline of the story, they're saying the original Raccoon City happened in 1998,
Right.
which I think is when it happened in the video games. So um, they're setting it up so right around the current storyline that's now is right around the fall of civilization. Like things are really going to go to shit. Um, and then there's also a future storyline, which is 15 years down the line. So you've got Lance Reddick, you've got his two daughters, and as far as through episode 6, or sorry, through episode 5, it seems like only one of his daughters survived till then, and it seems like maybe he didn't. Like he hasn't shown up in the future at all. So it seems like he has died. There was a little bit of an uproar because Lance Reddick plays a character called Wesker, who
Okay.
is the main character from the games. Wesker is a very German name, and the character is very white. So people were like, "Well, that's not very Weskery." And we're like, "Why don't you fuck off?"
Well,
You
it's
know,
not
like
very.
just it's fine.
This
You
is
know,
okay. Oh my god, we were kind of joking. I would know it was it was a different text chain. That whole, I'm gonna be quick on this one. I promise. Some of this stuff with no with the racial casting in
mm-hmm.
Hollywood, unless the specific race is a major part of the character and the storyline, who gives a fuck? Is there anything about this dude from the video game that is changed because he's black as opposed to white?
No,
Oh,
no,
guess what, folks? There's black people in Germany too. In fact, there's a lot of black people in Germany.
yeah, yeah,
So the idea of a black dude having a German last name, tongue punch my fart box. Just knock it
yeah,
off. It's enough. Like,
yeah, yeah,
get over
and
it.
he's so
It's like the
good too. Like
fucking
he's just
Miles
so
Morales
talented.
thing.
Like, yeah,
God.
yeah, I don't mind. Uh, like I get it. Like sometimes though, like even more so from books. Like people will read a book, and the character is described in a certain way, and they're like, "Well, that's not whatever." Like we've talked about Wolverine so many times. People still get on their shit
Yes.
about, well, if you don't cast somebody 5'3", you're not winning. I'm like, then go get Scott Conn because that's all you can
Yeah.
do.
That's exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
and they're like, well, blah blah blah. And then you're like, but did you like Hugh Jackman? Because he's 6'3". So, shut up.
Yeah.
But Taron Egerton is 5'9". That's about as close as you can get. And I watched some of the first episode of Black Box on Apple TV Plus. I think I talked
Okay.
about it last week. Um, and he is ripped in that movie, like physically. I can totally see Taron Egerton as Wolverine. He needs to do something with his voice. Like he's got to get a little tougher, a little gruffer with his voice to be Wolverine, but physically he would be fantastic.
After and thinking back, here's the other one that people don't think about, because I'm with you actually. When I first heard it, I was kind of like, I don't know about this,
Yeah,
but
I don't know about Eggsy as Wolverine,
but that's the thing though. You go back and look at Eggsy, and you look at the physicality that Taron Egerton can bring to a role, and all of a sudden I'm looking at it going, oh no, you know what? actually
Hmm.
Discord. And I think that, see, that to me was actually more my bigger concern when they cast Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, because up to that point, I don't
And
remember Hugh Jackman
since,
be, yeah,
yeah,
I don't really
like,
remember him being in action movies. Like he's done a
mm-mm.
couple, of things that you might call a little more physically demanding, but he wasn't an action star. So it didn't, like, I was like, why would it? But then also, like, Hollywood casting is weird because they do stuff where they're like, oh, but we need a big name because it's in this character. I think, and I know people will argue this one with me when we talk about this, but in the Wolverine movie, I get why they cast Liev Schreiber because they
Hmm.
wanted a name for it. But if you read the comic books, Sabretooth should have Triple H, Hunter Hearst Helmsley, for the amount of actual acting that role called for. I say this to people and they're like, shut up. There's no, I'll tell you what, go back and watch Blade 3 and watch Triple H in Blade 3. And you watch him with the nails and the teeth, and all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, it's Vampire Sabretooth. Like, yes, Pete, you are correct. This is absolute perfect casting. Like, he would have made the best Sabretooth. I get why you had to use Liev Schreiber. You had somebody sign on. You need another big name. But dude, it's not like the in that movie they had, the Liev Schreiber Sabretooth character was fucking delivering Shakespearean pathos. It was
Hmm.
still, like, his line
Grunty
readings were great, but
grunties.
yeah,
Yeah.
it wasn't like I wouldn't cast Triple H as Ray Donovan,
No,
like,
no.
which Liev Schreiber is amazing in fucking that, right? But I think that could have been done better. Anyway, off the soapbox, back to
Yeah.
Resident Evil.
So back to Resident Evil. I'm only five. I finished 5 episodes out of 8. It is decent. It's not great. It is definitely, for me, it's about as good as the movies were. I they were action horror movies, and that's what they were. Like, I don't know what people are going in looking for when they're watching these. If they're not a direct remake of the games, then they should be given the license that they're given, right? They should be given the space that they need to make their own story. And I feel like I said, it's a video game movie, a show, and you're trying to please two different audiences, and that's really, really hard. Like I said that when I watched Uncharted. Um, it's just like, for me, by the time I finally watched it, all the reviews had been in. I knew what everybody's complaints were, and I was able to watch it and accept those things and enjoy the movie for what it was. But it's really
It,
fucking hard to make a
is
movie based on an IP that exists.
is that out to stream somewhere yet, Uncharted,
No, I
or is it?
watched it on a plane,
Okay,
so that's
so I'm looking
it's yes,
forward to that movie because I have not
you've never
played the
played the
games
games.
at all. And I like Tom Holland. I actually, I, as much as I joke around about it, I don't hate Mark Wahlberg. I think when he's cast in the right role,
He's fine.
he's fun. You know, um, I'm looking forward to that movie because I love a good, like, romancing the stone, Tomb Raider, Indiana Jones kind of movie, like the
Yeah,
Goonies.
yeah.
I love all those movies. I think that's part of the reason why, like, what did I ones I just brought up, that was, oh, that's why, like, the Tomb Raider movies, except for the last one, because I felt like it looked exactly like the screenshots I saw from the new video
Oh
game.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Like that one, I saw that one and I was like, oh, this is kind of cool, and it's a very good. I think
And
the
I
newest
love
one,
Alicia Vikander too. She's
yes,
amazing.
I think the newest one did a much better job of being a standalone movie. Like, it holds
Hmm.
itself. I think the Angelina Jolie ones leaned way too much into the video games and the Laura Croft, but then took the storyline that they had and just made it ridiculously fucking stupid, that would not have existed in the video games. Like,
Hmm.
it was really kind of goofy. So it's interesting about this with Resident Evil because I enjoyed the movies, but I had played through the first Resident Evil on on PS1.
Hmm.
Like I think well, it's whatever if that was the first iteration of, but I remember the Owl City, and so I didn't really play many of them after that. So I don't know if the whole Umbrella Corporation thing like was a big part of the video game and the way the video game evolved. I haven't really read much about it, but those movies to me were fine action horror movies like you just said, but as their own thing. Like it was a cool little
Hmm.
series, but I didn't see how they tied back into that, Raccoon City first Resident Evil game, which is again the only one that I had played. So I was expecting it, at least I was expecting more horror out of it and less just kind of generic zombie gore out of those movies. I did like the last one though, and I love me some Mila Jovovich.
I love Mila Jovovich too, and I can definitely give those movies again. I can give them their own license, and to be honest, they had their own popularity away from the games. Like the
Good.
games, from what I've played, so I've only played the games on the remastered versions because I didn't start playing them when they came out. So I've only played them, so they've been kind of redone for the PlayStation 4 or 3 technically, but like the first three games are kind of one like story in that Raccoon City whole kind of thing, setting everything up. They start to veer off, and I don't. I have to play them, and I'm waiting to play them in order. They're remastering 4 right now, so I'll play that soon. And then I think 5 and on are good enough that I won't have to wait for like another remaster. I can play them on the 4. Um, but um, but yeah, I want to know that whole Resident Evil story, and I actually really enjoy the games. And they're cool stories. I can see why people like why they are beloved as they
Yeah.
are. Um, this show is tricky because it is taking place well after at least some of the stuff we've seen in the video games. Like I said, the whole Raccoon City thing, they've kept it to video game era timeline, so it's 1998. This one bounces back and forth between the timeline. Ultimately, in if you played, I think it's 2 is the one that takes place. No, I think it's 3 that takes place in the actual facility. Like you go into the
Yeah, yeah,
facility and you
yeah,
do
yeah.
shit. And that's Raccoon City, and that gets nuked at the end of that game. Like they drop an actual nuclear bomb on it, which they reference a couple of times in the show. Like it's a mystery. Like nobody, I don't know how nobody knows this place got nuked, but
Yeah.
they're like, yeah, it was a gas leaking explosion, whatever, because that's apparently the best excuse for anything, like Stranger Things. So like one of the so, but in that game, Wesker dies
Okay.
in Resident. So, but now, what 24 years later, he's alive and he's got 2 girls, but it's Wesker. And so they show footage of him in 1998 at one point, like torturing somebody. And so there's a mystery as to how he's here that they haven't resolved by the 5th episode. But why is a guy that's dead now alive with two daughters, basically?
Right.
Um, so that is the mystery of like the today timeline, and then the future timeline. The daughter that survived, Jade, she's trying to study the I guess zombies. I'll just call them zombies in the opening scene, um, and and then shit goes down, and she's in this whole adventure. So I'm curious to see where it goes. Like I said, I've only got 3 episodes to go, but I'm hoping it's got a decent ending. Unfortunately, it may not get a second season. I don't know what or why Netflix keeps and cancels the things that they do.
I don't.
So I half hope that they end their story here so we don't have to deal with it. But if it needs a second season, at least for where I'm at, I actually hope it gets it. It has a 53% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes, which is not great, but for this kind of show, I'm okay with it. But
Yeah.
the audience score is 21%. So I'm like,
Ouch.
it feels like it probably won't get a second season if it needs it.
Yeah.
But again, Netflix
Well,
has canceled some great shows like Teenage Bounty Hunters,
yeah.
and so
But Daybreak or whatever it's called,
yeah, that got a
the high
second
school.
season. That didn't look good.
Yeah.
um,
I don't.
but but like
Net, net,
just for example, Teenage Bounty Hunters, 96% audience score, 94% tomato meter, didn't get a second season. So like,
and that was one of the smartest, fun
it was
shows.
brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Netflix is becoming for me like the Sci-Fi Network is for you.
Yeah,
where they can't. They're just like I can't
put a lot of faith in them,
and I can't find any rhyme or reason as to why they're canceling things, because they're like, I get it. They feel like they're at a loss for money because you've got, all these other streaming services that like blah 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 blah. Guess what? Keep up with the original content because you were doing well with it.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was good shit.
Like Archive 81 got canceled. That show was great. Like if you look up that one on Rotten Tomatoes, great. But since they cancel things that people apparently don't like, maybe Resident Evil will go season 2. There's probably money behind it too. That's the other thing that a lot of these shows that continue have. Like, Daybreak was Will Smith, wasn't it?
Oh no, that's Bright. No, Daybreak, or not right. Daybreak. Daybreak. What's it called? It's the one. It's the one with the basically the zombie apocalypse, and it's the high school kids. And the kid is, what's the name of that fucking movie now? I know how I can, or that show. I know how I can find it because Matthew Broderick was in it. Matthew Broderick. He has most recently been in, let's see, it is yeah, no, it was Daybreak. And it got one season and it was 10 episodes. It's 6.6 out of 10 for on IMDb, but it's basically like it's a high school, zombie apocalypse happens. It's all Lord of the Flies. But it was done really, really well. And I mean, there's a cool love story in it. Like, there's a couple cool love stories in it. Actually, it's very interesting what Netflix does, because this, I don't understand why they didn't carry on, but Netflix is starting to almost gear itself in some ways. There's a lot of like oddball shit and they take movies, but Netflix, for its original programming, is really keeping the inexpensive, like young adult teenager kind of movie thing, and they're kind of capitalizing on that to a degree, because they got a ton of those that come out. Because Soph watches a bunch of them, and some of them are actually really, really well done. Actually, most of them are really well done, which is, I think, why they work so well. But they do, but they do stuff like that, and they cancel Daybreak, or they cancel Teenage Bounty Hunter, which is, again, if you are a listener or viewer of this show and you have not watched that yet, pause this, go watch that series, then come back and finish listening to us, because that show is so much more interesting than anything Kevin or I have to fucking say for the next 8 hours of watching that show.
That's true.
I can't speak enough about that show. Like we did like, I think
we've talked about it a couple of times, because I think I watched it and talked about it, and then you you had the opportunity to watch it and you did, and then you came back and talked about it. But yeah, anyways, so back to Resident Evil.
Yes.
I don't know. I don't have a final verdict on it. But for where I'm at watching it, not being 100% married to the series, because now I haven't played all 8 games or whatever it is, and totally drank the Kool-Aid. I know enough to know where it fits in with the first 3 games in respect to those.
Okay.
But I mean, the production quality is fine. There's some cool characters, and like I said, I kind of hope it gets a second season. I don't know what'll happen. Again, Netflix is Netflix, so we shall see. But that's like all I've really watched this week. So I will give
Well,
back to
is
you because you watched
well,
something
I
today,
did, but
right?
actually, before we do that, actually, oddly enough, though, in the video game vein of things, I actually have a couple of things I want to talk about. Because so since we've gotten the Switch, it's mostly been
Mm-hmm.
Mario stuff. That we've been playing with the girls. We got Just Dance 2022, and those games are actually really fun if you're into that kind of game. But mostly, we just got the sports for Switch,
Mm-hmm.
which is a lot of fun, badminton and stuff like that. But I have been playing recently a game called Triangle Strategy, and I know it's a game by Square, and it's not a Final Fantasy game, but it's that same turn-based strategy RPG like Final Fantasy Tactics was, and that
Okay.
style
Yeah.
of game. Okay, I love those turn-based strategy games. They're my favorite kind of game. Um, and this one, it's a lot of fun. It's called Triangle Strategy because all these games, because there's so many games that are like this, that they have to kind of differentiate themselves somehow, because when it really comes down to it, it's an RPG. So you have a bunch of characters of different classes, and you've got wizards and warriors and da 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 da, and you beef up their stats, and it's like Final Fantasy 7. It's like any RPG like that, but Tactics is kind of neat because it's almost like chess.
Mm-hmm.
These kind of
Mm-hmm.
games, the turn-based games like that, where you're moving your characters around the board and they attack from certain angles. So there's a lot more, well, obviously strategy to it than in a regular RPG. It's a lot of fun. It's got a fun little storyline. It's called Triangle Strategy because part of the thing that you have that affects characters and the outcomes of the kind of Game of Thronesy thing that you're stuck into is how your character reacts to other characters, but it's liberty, morality, and utility. And it's these three aspects of the character setup and the way it works. It honestly, it doesn't matter. It's a little bit of a red herring, and it's like, this is what makes our game fun. It's a really cool version of that. Now, I bring that one up because I'm playing it because um what I found out, and this, if somebody else is out there listening or watching that even familiar with the game series that I'm about to talk about, please reach out to us because I would just love to talk to you. So there is a turn-based RPG strategy game like this called Front Mission. It was originally released on PS1. Front Mission 2 came out on PS1. Front Mission 3 was not released in the United States. Front Mission 4 came out on the PS2, and that's where I was introduced to the Front Mission series. It was a demo disc in like a, not IGN. I forget what the video game magazine was at the time that was out, where you'd get demos for games. That used to be a big deal, kids. You couldn't just download demos because not everything was connected to the internet. So you had your PS2 and you'd go and buy a video game magazine, and oh, holy shit, there's a demo disc, and you'd put the disc in and you'd have like the first three levels of a game. And they just gave them away free, or you could steal it if you were really, really savage from the newsstand. But Front Mission 4 is one of these. It's a turn-based strategy game, and it's all mech combat, but it's not like anime mech combat. Even though it's in that kind of style, it's all grounded in on planet Earth. It is in the future, but the mechs that you use, they call them Wanzers. They're it's armies, like they're the military for the armies. And what has happened is, by the end of summer, they don't have an official release date, they have remastered Front Mission. The first one, the original Front Mission, it's coming out on Switch. The second one is remastered. It will be out on Switch as well, um, at some point. I am very excited for this because this hopefully means, if these games do well, that if we don't get the third, well, but that will get the fourth, which is probably it probably is my favorite video game of all time. I can't tell you how many times I played through it, um, how many times I beat it. It was just a fun game. If you're into those like Final Fantasy Tactics, the turn-based strategy type games, great game, lots of fun. So Front Mission 4 will be available, or Front Mission, it's called Front Mission First, and it's available for Switch at some point by the end of the summer. But it's all, I mean, it's a linear storyline that they put you through. It's a series of missions. All your mechs are all customizable, with different arms and legs and body styles and guns and the paint and this and that you can do, which is, part of the fun of a game like that, especially if you're into kind of mech combat. Um, so yeah, that's a big one that I'm looking forward to. But as you were saying there, tonight, right before the show, I was in the movie theater. Now I have not watched Thor yet. Okay, we're going Tuesday this week. Sophia's at cheer. Like this is where it gets tough because I had the surgery, so I was kind of down. And even though it was just a kind of sit there and heal kind of thing, it was when we could get to go and do it because I couldn't drive myself yet, until the other day. So I couldn't do that yet. So we're gonna go with some friends on Tuesday who haven't seen it either. So I'm really looking forward to that. But tonight, had a little date night with the wife and another couple, and we saw Elvis. I'm not a huge Elvis fan.
That's fair. I'm actually not either.
Now,
I don't dislike Elvis necessarily.
Yeah. But my wife really likes Elvis. Like not like nut in a nutty way, but she has a lot of memories to it. I did discover with Elvis though, tonight I am much more of a fan of post-war, post-movie star, newer Elvis, when he actually, there's a time period before he becomes fat, disgusting Elvis, when he's in Vegas, when he starts producing new music again, and that is the Elvis time period that I'm actually a fan of. There's a lot of really cool music that came out of that period. Elvis is it's a Baz Luhrmann movie, and it is incredibly obvious it is a Baz Luhrmann movie in a great way. Obviously, there's a lot of liberties taken with parts of the story. Austin Butler as Elvis is fucking amazing because when you deal with something like Elvis, well, who do you cast? Well, let's just go to Vegas. There's about 3,000 Elvis impersonators just there alone that can do it. Honeymoon in Vegas, they're the skydiving Elvises.
Flying Elvis is Utah chapter.
Exactly. He's just it's an amazing portrayal of the character, or of Elvis, without being an imitation and without it being my dog is getting into something and I don't know what it is. Fucker.
You'll find out.
I know. So he's just, it's an amazing depiction of Elvis without being a caricature or without being an impersonation, without it, it's a very, very good take on the character. Tom Hanks as Colonel Tom Parker. I had known enough of Elvis. Yeah, I had known enough of Elvis's history to know that Colonel Tom Parker was not, a good guy. He's the reason, Elvis, like the financial issues and the family sued him and all this stuff. And he was a total huckster and all this stuff. Like, I knew this. He was a crooked dude, right? I didn't know why Tom Hanks's portrayal of Colonel Tom Parker. I don't know if I would go and say Oscar worthy, we will. It's a great role and it's a great thing. And with the prosthetic they put on Tom Hanks to make him look, like Colonel Parker, and the accent Tom brings to it. And it's a really great. I mean, it's another one of those like Tom Hanks being Tom Hanks kind of things. Like the guy just shits fucking excellence when he gets up in the morning. Like you can't. He's just really good. There's a lot of great performances in this entire movie. Fun little side note that I picked up. I'm staring at one of the characters, going, Jesus, why the fuck does that guy look so familiar? So when Elvis is trying to make a comeback after the acting kind of falls through, he hasn't been doing music in a while. He's going to do the Elvis Christmas special, which I've seen. I've watched on TV.
I don't think I have.
And well, it's really neat. You've seen performances from it because it's supposed to be sponsored by Singer, you know, what are those things? Sewing machines.
Yeah, sewing machines.
Singer Sewing Machines is going to sponsor it, and it's supposed to be your standard Christmas special. Like they've got the ugly sweater for him to wear and everything. Well, there are these two producers who I forgot who they talked about they worked with, but they go to work with Elvis, and they're like, we don't know about producing a music special. Well, Elvis says, no, I want to do it this way. I want to do it my way. It's actually phenomenal, and it's a different Elvis. He said it's Elvis, it's black leather suit Elvis. Like you'd recognize a lot of the performances from it, because they've just been shown so many other times here and there.
Mm-hmm.
But the guy who plays one of these guys, I'll get his name for you in just a moment. The guy's name is Steve Binder. His partner is Tom Diskin. Steve Binder is played by Docre Montgomery.
Okay. Billy.
Who we all know is Billy Hargrove from
or the Red
Stranger
Power
Things.
Ranger.
Exactly, which is so funny. You know what, though? Only because I saw that movie in the theater. I took one of the kids to see it. I forgot whether it was Stella or another one. I don't remember him enough from that movie,
No.
but it was 2017, and he would have done it right before Stranger Things, because that movie came out in 2017. And the first, his first appearance on, well, no, because he wasn't on Stranger Things until the second season. So it wouldn't have been 2017. Never mind that. But close to it, like 2018 is only a year away. But he just looks very like it's just very different. But I'm sitting there watching Elvis, and all of a sudden I'm like, that's fucking Billy. Holy shit. Like you could just see it, even though he looks different, the hair and everything else. I'm like, that's awesome. If you know nothing about Elvis, this is a great movie to go and see. Of course, there's lots of liberties that are taken. Christy is, aside from being not just because she was a history teacher before that, she's a little bit of a history buff, and she reads a ton of books, and she's read a couple of books on Elvis, because she's not an Elvis nut or anything. Like, we don't have any fucking Elvis merchandise around our house that she's been collecting or anything like that. But she knows a lot about, like, or a lot, way more than I do, about Elvis's history and Priscilla and Colonel Tom Parker and the dad and all this stuff. And she said the movie was actually fairly accurate to what went on. You, of course, with any of these movies, there's so many liberties taken with actual conversations and things like that. But it's really neat because they do, in a lot of ways, address the, like, Elvis, stealing rock and roll from black people. Elvis knew he did. According to this movie, Elvis like really was he I had no idea. I knew he was religious. I knew he had some sort of start in the church. I had no idea that Elvis came from the tent revival, like, level of Christian church, like the feeling the spirit and the passing out and speaking in tongues and all that. I didn't realize he was from there. If you're an Elvis fan, the music throughout this movie, because it is a Baz Luhrmann movie, not every track is the classic Elvis track. Some of it gets a little
Mhm.
remastered, but it's done so well. Like he does it so great. But like I said, this is, if you do not like, you know, um Greatest Showman, if you don't like Romeo and Juliet from the 90s, if you
Moulin
don't like
Rouge.
Moulin Rouge, you are not going to like this movie. It is very, which is weird because I'm surprised that my in-laws liked it as much as they did at their age, because it's not as out there as Moulin Rouge by any stretch of the imagination, because that's its own little entity, but it's very Baz Luhrmann in the way it's, it's a lot in the beginning, the way it's filmed. Like it's one of those, like, like when you see you see a Francis Ford Coppola movie, it's Francis Ford Coppola. When you see a Steven Spielberg, there's just certain things. This
Guy
is, I
Ritchie.
mean, it exactly. No, oh, exactly. No, it's even better comparison. Quentin Tarantino, same. Like this is a Baz Luhrmann movie from beginning to fucking end. Visually, sound. Um, it is so phenomenally well done. It's really just a good movie. Even if you're not an Elvis fan, you can enjoy this movie very well. I think like Bohemian Rhapsody was an incredibly great movie, but I think Bohemian Rhapsody made more Queen fans than Queen fans saw Bohemian Rhapsody, if that makes any sense. Like I think but if you were a Queen fan, you loved Bohemian Rhapsody. I think you saw Bohemian Rhapsody and one of two things happens. You liked it, you thought it was good, or you loved it and you also became a Queen fan because of Bohemian Rhapsody. This movie could make some Elvis fans out of people because it features the music in the right ways. It pays homage to the black artists who originally did his work, and it gives you a little bit of understanding about how Sun Records was working and how, like just the way the music industry at that time worked. um which is good. It needed to be done because I again, this movie takes some liberties, but from everything I've read, Elvis sometimes gets hit with this kind of like, he stole rock and roll from black people and the moves. And yeah, he did to a degree. I won't say he didn't, but a lot of what Elvis really did, though, and they even say this in the movie, it's a big thing, is Jimmy Carter says it, actually. It's part of his speech when upon Elvis's death, is that he fused country music with black rhythm and blues of the time and created Elvis. Forget the king idea behind it. Elvis in the modern day age, you can say what you want about the people, the bluesmen that came before him. I know that's part of the big argument. Elvis, for the most part, broke rock and roll in this country and created a cultural phenomenon. And if there was no Elvis, the music landscape that we have today would look so different. I can't even imagine what it would look like. You don't realize how much Elvis really was out there. I had no idea also, a lot of the time, like, Elvis was really good friends with BB King and Mahalia Jackson and a lot of these people, out of Memphis at the
Yep.
time. It was a really, really big deal. It's a great story the way they tell it. Everybody in this movie, it's a phenomenal performance. There's no bad performance from anyone. Even the smallest role is just incredibly well acted. Um, it's a lot of fun. It's the only thing I have with it that's really tough. It's very long and it does
Mhm.
drag in some parts where I don't think it needs to, but it's that Baz Luhrmann kind of thing where he wants these pictures painted visually the way he does it. Um They handle Elvis's death incredibly well. Like they don't uh they bring us to the point where Elvis has basically just kind of lost it. Not mentally lost it, but he um Tom has basically locked him into working at this international hotel in Vegas, and it's his residency, and that's where he basically ends his life, ends the rest of his life doing this. I had no idea. Elvis, do you know this? Elvis Presley never left the country except when he went to Germany because he was drafted in the army. He
Huh.
never toured internationally, and part of this was because Colonel Parker didn't want him to because, and again, I want to read a biography on this guy to see if I can find out more about him. So Colonel Tom Parker was actually a Dutch guy. I forget his actual name. He doesn't exist. He had no nationality. He has no passport. They're not sure how he made it to the country. But what that meant was he couldn't leave the country because he couldn't get into another country and he couldn't get back in. So that was a big part of Elvis's story with that. He was a fucking horrible dude, like shades of, like, if you think you don't like I'm forgetting the guy's name now, but the NWA's manager, Jerry Heller. If you watch Straight Outta Compton, you think Jerry Heller's like a fucking scumbag and you hate him, and he was. Dude, Colonel Tom Parker is just a fucking horrible human being. Like what he was doing to Elvis was just fucking ridiculous. This is definitely a movie worth. If you're an Elvis fan, you've probably already seen it. If you're going back and forth whether you want to see this movie in the theater, if you've got the time to see it in the theater, go for it. It's Baz Luhrmann, so visually, the spectacle is there. It's worth it to see it on a big screen. But if you don't, you'll enjoy it just as much at home. It is definitely one to watch when you get home. It was a really, really good movie. Long, buckle in. It might be better for at home because it'll, be much easier to like get a snack or go to the bathroom because it clocks in, at I happen to have it pulled up. It clocks in at 2 hours and 40 minutes, 2:39. So it's again, perfect example. The 2 hour and 30 minutes Stranger Things season finale did not feel like 2 hours and 30 minutes to me. It was beautifully moving throughout. This felt like 2 hours and 40 minutes. Like I was looking at my watch a couple of times going, how much more does this shit have to do? For another point of reference, because I keep comparing this to the Stranger Things finale. Like my daughters were like, well, why can't we, because they wanted to start it, or well, Stella wanted to start it at like 11 o'clock at night. And I was like, honey, it's that movie's 2.5 hours long. And she was like, what's the big deal? We can watch it. And I'm like, yeah, honey, that's the same length as Infinity War. Like that's how long this episode of the show is. Like, go see Elvis. It's amazing. I don't know if you have anything else. I don't.
I don't. I'm pretty good.
Oh, that is actually, I do have one thing quick that I'll go over, and then wrap it up with something that was led into it like this. Christy also, she had a hankering to something we had watched before, that she and I had watched before, and now I'm following up with the next series. Have you heard of it's a series on Stars? Have you heard of The White Queen, The White Princess?
I've heard of them.
Okay, so there are all these books. They're based on these books by an author named Philippa Gregory, and they're basically telling the story of different queens in the English monarchy, and some of these have been told by other movies that have been out, like Elizabeth and things like this. Um, but the White Queen focuses on the Queen Elizabeth, who was the last of the House of York, before the Tudors took over. And the Tudors is what begins the first Tudor was Henry the First, and that's what brings us through the Henry line all the way into Henry the Eighth, which is what the White Princess is about. And that's the one I've now moved on to, because this is now, it's very interesting because the White Queen tells this story. And these are, I mean, this series is 10 episodes. It's not like multiple seasons. It's boom, the White Queen, 10 episodes, you're done. White Princess, 10 episodes, you're done. They're same author. The tone of the two series so far is so night and day different. It's amazing what they like, how they do it, and the difference in the way they're telling the story. Because you get done with one and you're like, and you have the feelings you feel about it, and then it starts the next one, and all of a sudden there are people who were, you like in the White Queen series, are kind of portrayed as the good guys, if you will, but now all of a sudden in the White Princess, they're not. They're the conquering kind of antagonists in some way, and you're like, whoa, 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 you're fucking me up. I just got done watching this, and now you're telling me this shit is this. You're like, don't be playing with my emotions, Smokey. These are incredibly well acted bits. If you have stars and you have a chance to check them out, they're really cool. And they're, again, liberties are taken, obviously, but they're fairly historically, at least on the big bullet points of the history of what happens, incredibly accurate and faithful to true life, which is really kind of cool. It's made me like, I'm looking for like a book now that outlines a history of the British monarchy, going back to the 1400s, because it's so fascinating, because it's where all this Game of Thrones shit basically came from. This idea, because it's there was a real, so we watch, okay, so you take Braveheart as an example, and you see how all the the different clans and the families and the houses will make war against each other. Well, in the time period that the White Queen takes place under the Yorks and the there's another royal family in there. Under them, court at that time, it was very much about becoming king and becoming this, but then never really doing anything with it, because you're trying to figure out succession and who was going to be next and who was going to be this. Whereas in other times of the monarchy, it was, yes, there were marriages for political alliance, but we're going to do X, Y, and Z, and that's what you get. That's what you see a little bit more of in the Tudor line, because Tudor line, Henry the First here, is the beginning of the Henrys. You've got, this now has also our Henry the Fifth, that's the Shakespearean play, this St. Crispin's Day speech, the Kenneth Branagh book, and obviously Henry the Eighth. Oh, I'm Henry the Eighth, I am, with all his wives and cutting people's heads off and breaking from the church. So I'm really looking forward to finishing this, but I can highly recommend, if you're just looking for a series to just kind of occupy your time, but that you will get into. It's one of those freaky ones that you don't think you're going to get into it. You're like, I'm like, all right, this will be good background noise while I'm folding clothes. Dude, you get sucked into it because the acting is amazing. The stories are really, really well done. You can't wait to see what happens next, because you're not a fucking history major, so you have no idea. Definitely worth watching. I'm in the White Princess right now. We'll update you. I'll update once I finish that series. Like I said, they're 10-hour-long episodes, with single seasons. So it's not going to be a hard thing to get through a bunch. Christy and I are going to probably watch a few more episodes tomorrow. Yeah, that it's about it. I don't really have anything else. We were talking about something before this, and I was going to use it as a segue into another conversation. And I can't remember what it was, and it mustn't have been that important, or I wouldn't have cut myself off with the White Queen. I would have just gone right into what I was doing. We're going to talk about. Interesting. Yeah, well, you know what? Hopefully next week we'll have our John Carter talk.
I did watch it. I'm ready.
I forget. So I have to rewatch it because I watched it because we were supposed to talk about it, in the 3 episodes I wasn't able to make it for. Like we were supposed to talk about it so long ago. I have to rewatch it just so that I have points that I can talk about. Because I have some feelings about it. I also what I feel like I know what I'm going to do with it. I'm not even going to talk about it on here right now though. There's that. Let's see. You guys had fun with Kim. I can't wait to listen to that.
Yeah,
episode.
it
Like,
really
she's
was
a good
fun.
bird, huh?
She's really cool. I think I really wanted to get on a couple more times and get more comfortable.
Yeah.
So she can, it takes a few, to loosen up a little bit if you've never done
for
it
sure.
before.
Yeah, but yeah, no, she's a good egg, just really, really nice person. I can't wait to listen to that episode. But yeah, I don't think there's anything else really that we need to speak on this week. Yeah, I'm gonna see Thor next week. I can't think of anything. I mean, we've got, we'll save Miss Marvel, any discussion of Miss Marvel when we have more finale. There's a lot that needs to be talked about there. Let's see what else. Oh, yeah, no, I didn't even want to talk about that. I guess that's about it. Really, kind of bumbled my way through the closing out of this fucking episode. It's good to be back. I've missed the shit out of it. It's been a bummer of a break. Like I said, by the time you guys are watching and listening to this, I will have all the past episodes. I will be caught up very easily now, actually. But yeah, Kevin, do you have anything else you want to say to the people?
I don't. I'm tired of the people. They've been bothering me all night.
Really?
There's no people here. It's just you and me. I love the people. Please, people, love me back.
Oh, that's what I did mean to ask you. So Resident Evil that you're watching here, is it worth it for me to watch it if I'm not like involved or invested in the games at all?
I think so.
Really?
I think so. I mean, it seems like it covers what you need. There's Easter eggs and stuff all over the place. Like if you avidly played the games, especially the early ones, there's a scene when a girl's locked in a room. The door is very reminiscent of the rooms that you would lock yourself in for safety. And then there's a typewriter off to the side, and that's how you used to save your game.
Okay. Yeah.
So there's little things, but you wouldn't notice otherwise. And it's fine. It's totally fine.
Yeah. That's cool. All right, yeah. So I'm actually interested in watching that then a little bit because, like I said, I liked the movies, but I knew just from reading stuff that people had said online that the movies after, like, say, I think the first one really started to stray from anything they were doing in the video game series at that point. Even though there was the video game series, if I understand it correctly, was kind of running concurrent to like the way the movie was, or like some of it was prequels. It was Mila Jovovich. She was running around killing zombies. You can't really go wrong. She's a cool action star, but yeah. Well, I guess that's it. You should be hearing some theme music right now, and I guess I'll just say like, subscribe, have a week. We saw a preview tonight for a movie, and I'm not a Billy Eichner fan. I really, his whole little shtick, Billy on the Street, like it didn't. I get why people liked it.
He's a little over the top for me a lot of the time.
Yeah, I get. Yeah, I'm like, I get why people like this. Like, I see the humor in it. I see the value. I said it's just not that funny to me. But he is actually starring in a movie called Bros that is coming out, and it's basically a gay rom-com, really, with Billy Eichner, but it's like the guy who is, oh my god, and everybody in this cast is gay, which is awesome because they pull out. So check this out. This is hilarious. So you've got Harvey Fierstein is in the cast. Kristen Chenoweth isn't gay, but Broadway.
She's a
You've
gay
got Luke.
icon, though.
Exactly. um, so it teams around Billy Eichner. I forget, he like works for some gay group, blah 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 blah. But he falls in, he's very much alone. He's not the, your standard gay dude kind of thing. But he falls in love with, and he starts this relationship with a gay dude he's like a bro gay dude. Like, and it's just, go watch the trailer for it. Like, you're gonna watch it and you're gonna be like, oh, this actually looks kind of funny. But like Jim Rash is in it, Billy Eichner, Dot Marie Jones, who I don't, that
I know the
probably
name,
doesn't.
but
So she was Coach Beast on Glee, which I
okay.
know. Yeah, Guillermo Diaz, who, that was the most interesting. Wow, he's a homosexual I ever found out in my entire life. Guillermo Diaz, if you go back to Half Baked, is fuck you, and not you're cool, and fuck you, I'm out. Like, he plays these like super hard Latino characters. He's so funny though. Amanda Bierce, who we would all know as what is her name? Steve's wife from Married with Children. The first,
Mm-hmm.
I'm forgetting her name. Bowen Yang, who is on Saturday Night Live. Benito Skinner, Jai Rodriguez from Queer Eye. A whole bunch of, like, the who's who of trans actors in Hollywood right now. Guy Branum, who, if you are familiar at all with the Chelsea Lately show, Guy Branum was always on there. There's this cast is huge, and they're like, it's so, the movie just looks really fucking funny. Like, it looks like I said, it's obvious. I mean, it's a gay rom-com, but it's another one of those. I forget, there was another one we were talking about, like, most recently, like, or not most recently, but recently, where there was a movie that, like, we saw where there was like two characters were gay or something, or it was like, that was the basis for it. And you, not that you should care, but like, you didn't care because the story was so good. It was like, just, it was a love story and they just happened to be gay. Like, I'm looking at this and the movie is all about being gay. Like obviously that's what it is. That's how they paint the backdrop of it. But like, it looks like the story itself is just a good romantic comedy without that. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, the script itself, yes, it's obviously a big part of the movie, that they are gay. Like, that's a big focus on the movie, but I'm not making it make sense. It just looks like it's a good movie without that.